2025 NFL Draft is in the books. The Bills made 9 selections. And earlier today, Bills general manager Brandon Beane, he joined our morning show that did include a bit of a heated conversation to start, as Beane appeared to take some offense to some of the criticisms regarding the Bills' wide receiver room.
I'd love to play fantasy football, but there's one football. You can't give it but so many people. I don't understand this narrative. I felt it a little bit from a couple of the reporters in the thing. Like, our job is to score points. It doesn't matter what receivers, what quarterback. If you score points at the level we scored, that is winning football.
You can listen to that entire conversation up at our website, WGR550.com, the Odyssey app, or on our YouTube page under WGR Sports Radio 550. The Bills could be adding to their wide receiver room, as being later confirmed with One Bills Live that they are having free agent wide receiver Elijah Moore in for a visit. Moore had a career high in catches last season with Cleveland with 61 and had 538 yards and 1 touchdown. Moore's also just 25 years old. We'll get more on the Bills and their draft classes. Stay tuned at 4. Sal Capacio will join the show. The Pittsburgh Penguins are making a coaching change. The first time in 10 years, Mike Sullivan and the club have agreed to part ways after making the playoffs the first 7 years of his tenure. Sullivan failed to do so the last 3. Staying with hockey, 2 games tonight at 7. The Panthers are up 2-1 on Tampa. Then at 9:30, Game 5 of Colorado Stars in Dallas. That series is tied at 2 games apiece. And then in the NBA, it's 2 games as well. The Cavs are looking for the sweep of the Heat at 7:30. Then at 10, the Warriors host the Rockets and lead that series 2-1. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
And the Bulldog.
What's the report from outside?
I was outside for maybe 3 minutes. I counted 8 Q-tips. It's got to be one person that just throws their Q-tips out the window when they're done using them in their cars.
It's Mike Schopp.
One person?
More than one person using Q-tips and throwing them outside?
I don't think I use 8 Q-tips in a year.
I think I've never used 8 Q-tips.
And the Bulldog.
What the hell is going on out there? I don't think I want to work in a place where people roll their windows down if they're using Q-tips for Lord knows what and just throw them on the ground.
Well, you do.
What, is it the 70s?
Oh, that's not very nice.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
Driving on the highway 65 miles an hour. I get a little left in my soda from the fast food drive. Out the window.
Yeah.
That was the 70s. Who gives an F about anything?
Throw a burrito out the window.
Nothing matters. 2025, what are you doing?
On WGR.
Throwing Q-tips out of your car.
Sports Radio 550.
Hello. Welcome to the show.
More on that developing story later.
It gives me absolutely no pleasure to announce that because of this morning's events, we will not be spending all day debating what weight TJ Sanders should play at. Perfect world, we would be fielding calls on that subject. I had a poll scheduled for 3:08, the usual time. 290, 295, 300, other, please. Tweet me a 3-digit number in that case. If you click other, that's what you're supposed to do.
308 even could be a selection.
I am as disappointed as you are, believe me.
Yeah.
Who do we send flowers to? Everybody involved?
Everybody involved. I think everybody involved, everybody involved deserves a hat tip. I guess I wouldn't
want to leave Brandon Beane out of it.
No, definitely not.
Because, it was real. And isn't that what we always want and we often don't get is real? How long has he been carrying around? One of these days, I'm coming back with the Allen pick. And it was 7 years.
Yep.
But it wasn't 7 until it was sort of proven right, if you will. 5, 4. One of these days, I thought that was maybe the most amazing thing about this morning. We've talked about that topic every day for 3 months, if not 3 years. And I think you do this. I know I do this. Every time it comes with the preface, they're pretty good without another wide receiver. They're pretty good.
Right.
We always make that point.
Yeah.
I hope anybody listening, would recognize that.
Yeah, he's definitely got scoreboard.
Which makes it all the more bizarre.
In more ways than one. They've got the record, they've got 5 straight division titles, and all the points they scored last year with an offense that did not have, They did, though. See, this is the thing for me. Like, I'm sorry. I do try to. I don't just decide I'm going to feel this way or that way. I try to take cues, and maybe I miss them. Maybe I'm wrong. How I interpret things doesn't have to be right, and maybe this is an example of that. But Cooper, absolutely Cooper. Like, they did do that. I said that all through the draft season. They 2 guys out, 1 guy in. Neither guy is, the replacement for Cooper, I guess, Palmer, and he's not as accomplished as Cooper was when he got here. Put out of your mind what Cooper did when he got here and think about what they were trying to do. Get somebody because they needed that juice. So that to me is a cue that they knew they needed more after they went through the summer, and they went out and acted on it. And then the other thing to me that sort of pushed me to not just dismiss receiver even as early as 30, although I would admit it would have been a stunner even ahead of the draft if they had done that, and they didn't. They didn't even come close. They didn't pick a receiver until their very last pick.
Nobody fell either.
Right.
At 30.
Right. So,
not that matters.
But still, the way they talked, Bean and McDermott both, about Coleman and even Kincaid to an extent as the season ended, about needing to learn how to fight through adversity and getting stronger and bigger so you're not as susceptible to injury in the case of Kincaid. Coleman was more the former comment I just made. That was another thing that, to me, that was a clue. You're telling me you sound like you're not sure how much you want to count on these guys. So what am I going to do out here? I'm going to go, I'm not sure how much I want to count on these guys. Like I might need more. And so that was why I never wanted to give up on an early, pushback on Sal, saying the first 3 picks. I mean, as it turned out, he couldn't have been more right. They waited until what? When did they finally draft someone, the tight end in round 5? It's the first time they picked someone who wasn't a defender.
Tight end is even defense adjacent.
I guess, especially his calling card is blocking.
5 years at Yale, and he wasn't done. That's defense adjacent right there. That guy could play some nose tackle, I bet.
So anyway, I'm not trying to use their behavior as some defense. I mean, to me, it's an entirely defensible position that you thought they needed more juice at receiver. And I'm just telling you, the way I interpreted how they sounded led me there. I don't know how thirsty I was, but I got thirstier for a receiver after they talked about their guys at the end of the season. And I don't know, that could have been some honesty and the board didn't fall right, so they couldn't do anything that they would have liked to do.
But he wouldn't have sounded like he did today if that was the case.
Or you just didn't prioritize it.
Defiant.
Right.
We finally had some words. I say finally. I mean, it was to the extreme. We finally had some words from Brandon Beane and the Bills that align with their actions. I mean, the actions, not to gloss over the Cooper point, but in the draft, it's been a discussion whether it's the draft or a trade or whatever. Like, it's always been debatable. Has it been enough? Right? It's been great. Their offense has been great, but where's the Xavier Worthy, if you will? Where's any guy? Where's the guy that you just can? There's no doubt he's going to be here a long time. He's going to go down in history as Allen's guy. And so far, the only guy close to doing that is Diggs, which, Diggs was great. So you finally got some real words, not just way, way, way beyond we're happy with our guys, just we'll see what happens. Anything can happen. Just the sort of the usual stuff. And I appreciate that. There's nothing here from me, and I know from you, that's going to be like, some people, everybody's talking about it. Oh, well, you have to appreciate his passion and his honesty. I got that tweet. No, or his right to say it. Nobody's questioning any of that.
Right.
That certain things are a given. And that you'd only want to question the Bills' general manager's passion if you didn't think there was any. Not that there would be too much. I mean, that's not even a discussion. The discussion is, actually, I'm not even sure the discussion is the point of the argument. At this, it's been argued so many times, and what the Bills have or haven't done was reinforced by the way Beane described it. We can safely say they weren't sniped on Ibuka or somebody. Like, they were just not, they didn't think it was important. That's important enough. Mm-hmm. That's the essence of it. The essence of it always has been the feeling by some, and I share it, that the Bills don't think the position of wide receiver is as important as so many others. I would say largely the analytics community. I think fans are split. We're seeing that. But, for years, a certain faction of the football world and the fan base have been, as you know if you listen, waiting for them to make like a move that, like capital M move, at that position since Diggs. And really nothing has come close enough to warrant.
Cooper was the biggest swing, I would say.
Cooper was a swing.
Unless you think drafting a receiver with your first pick last year outweighs Cooper. Maybe that's a push. I don't know. They're both significant tries. It's a third-round pick for Cooper, a guy who's got the resume of a number one receiver, which you had just traded away in the spring in Diggs.
Well, can I say here, it's always two things. I'm just sort of taken back to the time when Marv Levy was running their draft. And who were the guys? Dockery, Langston, Walker? No, was he a Bill?
That's it, yeah.
There were 3 big lineman ads. And we would hear, because their offensive line was still not good.
When are you going to address it?
When are you going to address the offensive line? And I would always say they did. They have. It's not just investing in it. It's doing it successfully. And the Bills have invested at wide receiver. We got the other day to how much does Samuel make? And what has he been good for? How much does, Coleman on his deal? What does he count for? Kincaid in his part? How much is Palmer? All these guys. And who's actually going to be good? And Shakir even, who, he's fine. He's good and he got really paid. What is that going to? Is that going to be 3 touchdowns? Like, what is that going to be, Shakir? That's a pretty good investment at the position if you include Kincaid, which I am, pass catchers. And then the debate is like, well, has it been bad actually? Like the quarterback won the MVP and so on and so on and so on. I think the most telling thing about this morning is that Bean is like seemingly really on edge about it. Because I don't know, think about how you would be. Everybody's different. It could get to you. You know that the narrative is out there. You know that you're talking to people who have pushed it. Like you could lose it. One of these times you could snap. The draft is just over. You're exhausted. You didn't get a good grade somewhere and be like, listen, can I just defend myself out loud here? Tell you what I'm really thinking. Bam. But you could also be, this again. What's my record? How did the season end? Like, we felt we needed defense a lot more badly. Next. Simply, okay, I understand your complaint, but we think we know what we're doing. We've had a lot of success, and our defense needed a lot of new help. So that's what we did. And what do you say to that?
I mean, okay. I hope it works. Right? I hope it works. I hope you get some guys that can play and help you. I highly doubt you're going to turn into what the Eagles did to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl in one off season, but you got to start somewhere. So, yeah, I don't know. I did not get up today or spend any part of yesterday really upset, even bothered by how they drafted. I mean, would I have liked a receiver on Saturday at some point, in the 4th round, the 5th round or something?
Not the 7th?
Sure. Yeah, I would have liked that. But it doesn't. I really like the first 4 picks, to be honest with you. The Arkansas edge guy was somebody that I thought they might have to pick in the 2nd round, and to get him where they did, that was after they maneuvered, right? Moved up to get the first D tackle they picked and ended up with a 3rd as part of that and got that guy. I like those first 4 picks. I think those first 4 picks are going to be on the field this year for the Bills. I don't know about the rest of it, but they set out to remake their depth chart really here. I mean, they've got young DBs here in those later rounds, and so they've got an opportunity to sort of reset here, and I'm fine with all that.
A 1st and a 6th at corner is, wink emoji.
Right.
Elam and Benford.
That worked out well last time. Well, okay. I mean, it worked out well enough with the 6th. I mean, obviously the 1st was a pretty big mess.
It's cute.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Now I feel like the whole thing is on trial today because of what happened this morning. More than just this draft singularly. I wonder what what pushed Bean to it, has it been stewing? He mentions in there, I think even in the clip that we played, that he felt like there were a few people in the room at the news conference wrapping up the draft that sort of were picking, like something tripped a wire for him.
Reporters,
because he says reporters that were sort of going there, but maybe they didn't get all the way there. So maybe he was ready for that, and just decided to just lay it down like he did.
Or maybe he considers Jeremy and Joe reporters, which would be wrong.
Correct, right. Yeah, I don't want to even get into speculating about something like that. I have no idea.
But just the Bills have had a lot of success. End of the day, though they haven't won in the playoffs, when it mattered the most, they've won playoff games. You gotta respect that. And ultimately, like, that's the thing. They've been very successful. It's not the drought. But there were times, even into McDermott, where they would say things that would be like, oh my God, they're never going to get there. Like it's like when they drafted Allen and big hands and weather and just ground and pound in those years. And like, they're never going to wake up and realize the greatest years in the history of the Bills were predicated on an unstoppable offense. And, in the same stadium, believe it or not, somehow in this climate, that happened, and that's 30 years ago. Are they ever going to get there? They do. They fall into it. I don't know. Like, this is the kind of day that takes me back. This isn't fantasy football, Bean says. Okay, so again, to you, on some level, offense is fantasy football. Having a good passing game, having a great receiver, that's just like not real football. Is that what anybody's saying? Is that like fair at all?
It's definitely not what I'm saying, because I think I could not care less about fantasy football.
Well, it just isn't.
Right. When I get to I need more stuff, it's not because I want a guy that is gonna be a story in your world. I don't care. Just I want a guy because I want to be as good as I can be. That's it. Like, and I know that's what Brandon Bean wants too. But
it's so condescending.
Yes, that was exactly the word I was just gonna use. It is so condescending to people who play fantasy and not.
It's I don't even take it that way. I mean, it's just sort of, you think points are what? Like, not really how you win. And I know he knows that they averaged 30 points, and they did that, but it's still like, in his head, it's, well, this isn't fantasy football. Recently, this sort of tweaked me when, like, you're talking about speed all the time, right?
Yeah.
They pass on Worthy and get to Coleman, and yikes at this point. And Worthy was the fastest guy at the combine. He's not for us. And he says recently, Bean, this isn't track. Sir, we know. Nobody is saying it's track. It's just another way of sort of poking at anybody who thinks, well, speed is good and may be vital to success, and everything else, like fantasy football, I don't know. Didn't go great. I all the stuff I think doesn't really need to be said about, well, passion, honesty, real. I'm glad for it.
Yeah.
I owe thanks to some people here, because I don't know if this won't be what we talk about all summer.
Well, sure.
The fact that he revealed what he did about sort of, he's maybe tight on Coleman right now and Kincaid and like Elam. Recent drafts.
He's put himself and those players on the spot by handling today the way he chose to handle today.
I think so.
I think that's an opinion, but I really believe that. I think the pressure goes up on those guys now, and that's fine. Like, again, maybe they're ready to take that step, and okay, great, but. Again, like I predicated a lot of where I was looking for help for this team this offseason on how they sounded about what they had. And so, again, I can be wrong in interpreting it the way I did, but his own clues sort of led me to, they still need, they know they need one more piece, right? Field stretcher, whatever it is. But, didn't find it this weekend. Okay. But I don't know. I didn't hear the whole morning show today, need to be said, right? So I wasn't up to hear what preceded 8:30. But So I don't know how much they were complaining, like what set Bean off. It might have just been a couple of minutes with Sal, I think, is the way it sounded. Like at the end of Sal's appearance right before Bean, whatever they were talking about there is what I think Bean was reacting to. Because, I mean, I would guess, like, I know how much they feel the receiver idea. I mean, the wide receiver training all the stuff, but I find it hard to believe they were just sitting here clobbering him and them for the draft.
Yeah, no.
So that's what Bean sort of made it out like that was what was happening, and I just that would stun me.
It's hilarious, I think, that they brought in Elijah Moore today for a visit the day after the draft or the Monday after the draft, because on some level they're looking for help at the position. Elijah Moore, to me, I wonder what Joe would say. To me, he's the guy that started it. Whatever year that was, 21, whatever draft that was, maybe even earlier than that. But I feel like Elijah Moore was the player when maybe it ends up at Rousseau and Basham. I hope I have the year right. And we were talking about Elijah Moore and Rondale Moore in that draft, and there were other guys. I'm like, man, wouldn't it be great if the Bills added to Diggs and Davis with like a smaller speed, like this guy now, as they say, cooking with gas, right? So they don't. And their offense has still had a ton of success. But to me, he is literally the player I think of for when the so-called train got rolling. Right. It started with Elijah Moore. The day 2 trade, I wanted them to figure out a way to get into the 3rd round. And they do by that trade. 15 picks up for an interior defensive lineman. You got him a 3rd, right?
Right.
You got him a 3rd.
Right.
I just hardly ever heard about the player. I don't know that he wasn't on boards and whatnot. When they did it, we had a few minutes to sit with it when they did it. I thought it was going to be Ezeraku. To me, that was the guy who, by consensus and need and everything put together, okay, I can see trading up for that guy. Because even though you want inside more than edge, I can see it. Like, I can live with that. Instead, I don't know. There are other ways to get a 3rd round pick. But what? We're not going to know anything about results here for a long time. We've got to come to grips with that. We're not going to have results, for a long time on any of it. We talked about Maxwell Hairston on Friday. They do add another corner. There is a receiver in the end. I don't know. I'm sure it wasn't meant to be funny. But Caden Prather out of Maryland at pick 240. 3 offensive players, tight end, tackle, and the aforementioned wide receiver. All right, everybody. A lot of you have been talking about it all day. What do you have to say? 803-0550. Anything change for you on Bean from this morning? Maybe not. I'm not saying it should have necessarily, but it was a memorable conversation. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here. Sal at 4. This is WGR.
General Manager Brandon Bean, who had a busy weekend, a lot of hours logged. Brandon, we had 2 draft parties, so we're kind of tired too. We were up late with you on the first round and the second round. It's a busy weekend for you.
Yeah, no, it was. It was. I was just listening to the last few minutes of your show before I came on, waiting on here.
All right.
Sounds like 2018 all over with you guys.
Well, how so?
Well, you guys were bitching in 2018 about Josh Allen. You guys wanted Josh Rosen, and now you guys are bitching that we don't have a receiver. I don't get it. Like, we just scored. Hold on, let me talk. We just scored 30 points in a row for 8 straight games. A year ago, I get you guys asking why we didn't have receivers, but I don't understand it now. You just saw us lead the league in points when you add all the postseason. No one scored more points than the Buffalo Bills, including the Super Bowl champions. So you just saw us do it without Stephon Diggs, same group. How is this group not better than last year's group? Our job is to score points and win games. Where do we need to get better? Defense. We did that. So I get it. You got to have a show, and you got to have something to bitch about. But bitching about wide receiver is one of the dumbest arguments I've heard.
Okay. I mean, I wish you'd listened to the 2 hours and 25 minutes before that, because there's plenty of things we do like about your draft, and I find it curious the energy you're coming at us with. But I mean, that's your choice.
I get it. I'm just like, let's be realistic. Our job is not to have. It's not fantasy football, like to trot out the best receivers. You got Josh Allen. First thing you got to do is protect him. You can't have everything. You can't have Pro Bowl wide receivers and have a Pro Bowl offensive line and an All-Pro quarterback and 3 great running backs. Like you gotta pick. Sure, I'd love to play fantasy football, but there's one football, Jeremy. There's one ball. You can't give it to but so many people. So that's where I'm like, I don't understand this narrative. I felt it a little bit from a couple of the reporters and the thing. Like, our job is to score points. It doesn't matter what receivers, what quarterback, what. If you score points at the level we scored, that is winning football.
No doubt about it. Something that we've said quite a bit. 30 points per game, a good offense last year, an incredible offensive line, a good run game. You did lose 2 receivers and add 1. I mean, many out there thought you might add another one. I was going to save the receiver conversation till after we talk defense, but if you want to go there first, I mean, it's fine. I think you've got some nice pieces there. Keon Coleman hopefully can take a step forward, and Curtis Samuel, we saw his season get kind of cut short or whatever, off to a bad start due to injuries. So you definitely have some pieces there. When it comes to that position, one of the things that the draft does, Brandon, I think you see all these teams add all these things, and I know like the board falls how the board falls. The reason I finished up with Sal the way that I did was I see lots of teams that are kind of flush at that position still adding a few more pieces. And one place that I don't think you would even dispute is it's a place to save money. I mean, from a market efficiency, the wide receiver position gets expensive, and adding in the draft is a place to get some cheap options. So that's part of the reason that I kind of focused on it a little bit, is just because it seems like it's smart business to maybe add some there.
Well, it could be, for sure. It's you want to do that anywhere, just like corner is as well, which we did that, or defensive line, defensive tackle in particular. So yeah, you can only get after you as you get to a certain point on the board, you're going, all right, how does this guy help? But yeah, listen, if there was a guy when we picked it the first round that we're like, yes, this guy's dynamic, he's going to fit here, we would have turned it in. In the second round, we would have done it. We went up and got TJ. Like, we weren't dodging receiver. We were going in, hey, we had the guys stacked where it was. I didn't think it was the deepest class.
Sure.
I'll say that. But, yeah, if it would have worked out, I would have gladly done it. But I'm trying to make sure we got the best team, not the best receiving core.
That's great. That's great. If that's the case, it seems a little odd to be upset at people that think that adding a receiver made sense. You just kind of make the point there that if it had lined up on the board, you would have done it.
Yeah, best players. Like, that's what would. But Jeremy, you can't go into a draft unless you got a major hole there. And I'm looking again at our receiving core, and you guys forget you're not counting like Dalton Kincaid.
We are
a receiving tight end. Like, you gotta include that in there. Just the way the Kansas City Chiefs count Travis Kelce, or some of these other teams count their guys. Detroit counts Sam Laporta, like. George Kittle, and like you name them, those types of tight ends that are receiving threats, those guys count in your mix too. You can throw them the ball.
That's right. We do count them.
Yeah,
we talk about them a lot. Yep.
Well, and you mentioned the hole there, Brandon, and that's why I wasn't thinking about this for first round, but I'm wondering from your standpoint in the organization how big a hole you feel Mac Hollins left. And what you believe in your internal group now you could do to replace that. Because that was a player that played a lot of snaps and a lot of blocking and special teams and the veteran presence. So that was, to me, the part of receiver for me was always figuring out how big a hole is that and how big do you...
As you get to a certain point on the board, you're going, all right, how does this guy help? If there was a guy when we picked it the first round that we're like, yes, this guy's dynamic, he's going to fit here, we would have turned it in. In the second round, we would have done it. We went up and got TJ. Like, we weren't dodging receiver. We were going in, hey, we had the guys stacked where it was. I didn't think it was the deepest class. I'll say that. But, yeah, if it would have worked out, I would have gladly done it. But I'm trying to make sure we got the best team, not the best receiving core.
Well, that sounds more from this morning with Brandon Beane like you're used to. If there was a guy, we would draft him. The problem is you're drafting someone else, right? Like, I don't know. I think what we got earlier in the conversation was just not the priority you guys have been, quote, bitching about it being for years. And then it sort of, toned down. Well, I mean, we would have. Nah, I don't know. I think you're saying both things at once now. You're trying to build the best team, which is completely defensible. You thought defense was a much bigger need. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people would say the same. I think most people would say the same. Leave it at that. You were going to draft Luther Burden if you had pick 56 or whatever pick you would have needed to have him. He went early. Pick someone else for this. You were going to do that. Actually, if the guy was there, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I think for years it's been like this, and it was predicted to be like this, and it was like this, which was they were going to draft defense, just defend it.
Yeah, I think it's pretty easily defensible.
Me too.
That doesn't mean that we have to agree with it, but they did it, and so here we are. I wonder if all of this is just There's probably a sense, I shouldn't phrase it that way. It would make sense to me if both guys, McDermott and Beane, are starting to feel like, they know what the real world is here. Like, guys don't have these jobs for life. And they have been close, and they have been hitting their head on basically the same ceiling time over time over time. And yes, you can support, keep knocking on the door, doing things right, building your team. One of these years, it'll fall right. Okay, I'm here for that, and I largely believe that. I don't think they can't win with these people in charge. They're not forbidden from winning with these people in charge. And look, they've been close without prioritizing receiver. All I'm saying is maybe consider prioritizing it a little bit more. you might get a different result, I know the knee-jerk after the Super Bowl, the Bills lose to the Chiefs again by 3, in a playoff game, and it's, I got to stop them. 9 yards a game 9 yards a play the year before. This year, 30 points. The Chiefs never scored 30 points. I got to fix my defense. And then the Eagles go out and just strangle the life out of the Chiefs 2 weeks later. All right, it can be done. I have to do that. Yeah, or you could just try to find your way to 4 more points some way, somehow, and not have your season end 2 years in a row with your offense having a chance to make the winning play and failing. That's there too. So, I think to have the whole idea of getting stronger on that side invalidated and reduced to, it's not fantasy football, there's only one ball and all. I don't know, man. It's just that I don't agree with it. I really don't think it's right. I just think it's a bad take.
Let's go to your calls. 803-0550. John is next. Hi, John. First.
Hey, guys. So the wide receiver debate that was talked about this morning aside, I just think the way that Brandon Beane acted earlier was uncalled for, and the comments were kind of unbecoming of an NFL GM. He sounded like Bob and Sheik Dawaga than an NFL GM. And the people who are currently cheering on Beane for his comments are probably some of the same people who were cheering on Ken Dorsey when he went crazy in the coach's box.
I thought of that. And
kind of years later, we kind of all right, that was a major red flag. I know Beane wouldn't talk to Pat McAfee like that, and I know that Jeremy and Joe wouldn't talk that way to Beane. But Beane thinks it's okay to treat others like that. So, after that whole thing, I kind of just came away from it being like, maybe Beane's a jerk. That's kind of what I came away with.
I would not say that. I don't know him very well, but he snapped. Because these guys always make their best effort to not, be raw in those moments, and he was raw. And you don't have to think that that's bad. two people who are very close can get after each other like that, and it sounds way worse. But, in this kind of setting, this is why it's such a big story, is that it was unusual. I also thought of Dorsey because I'm getting some of the same preface. I think I had a moment last week when I said this, and I think today is maybe proof of it. Today is the most sort of go Bills day of the year where we run up against the fans that we, in a way that we don't during the season. When they win, everybody is impressed and happy. When they lose, everybody is down and critical. The draft is when, I think I speak for everybody here, you do your best job to try to predict it and analyze it honestly, and a whole bunch of casuals come out, which is great. I mean, it's great for the radio station. Whole bunch of casuals come out and tell you, just like, how do you even know yet? If you guys are so smart, why don't you work in the league? It's the same things every year. And it's really only right now when that sort of peaks. Yeah. And then we'll get into the season and it'll not sound like that. And, it'll again be sort of like everybody's kind of on the same page. Not always, but the day after the draft, you with Watkins, I hate this trade. And the same 10,000 people, if I don't flatter ourselves, who are like, why don't you work in the league then, are out there today saying the same thing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it is a day. I mean, and look, I don't know how inside baseball I need to get here, but I think we all understand doing this job. There are going to be people out there that think we think we know it all. I think some people in the audience think that we handle ourselves in such a way that we're, we know everything. And I definitely do not think that. I definitely think most of the people I know in this business don't think that. But when you have a day like today, you get that portion of the fan base is they're on Bean's side. Oh, of
course
you shut up the radio guy, the loudmouth radio guy who's always right or whatever. However, that person who doesn't really, listens to the station but doesn't like us or one of us or whatever, Bean did a thing today because he punched that guy right in the mouth. Okay, I mean, good for you. I'm fine with that. I don't mind that you feel that way about me or us or my friends. Doesn't bother me. It's just the way it goes. But it's so funny how those camps just line up because, of course, yeah, today is a day. And I totally get it. I'm even to an extent susceptible of it. You wouldn't believe some of the criticism I get for liking stuff they do too much. But I'm over here going, I kind of like the first four picks. I kind of like what they did there. I'm happy. I didn't get what I wanted, but I get what they were doing here. But it's always so, you're over here and no, you're over here. And I don't know, it never really works that way.
It's protecting the shield, right? It's protecting your team because there are fans who think that we could disrupt it. And I don't know. I hardly ever think that. I think there's almost never proof of that. But any sort of anxiety that the radio station or the media has any role in, what are fans going to do? 9 out of 10 fans are going to be like, shut up. Leave them alone. Not all. Maybe it's too high a number. Poor Cheektowaga. It's always Cheektowaga, by the way. Why can't it be Grand Island once in a while where it's the anonymous guy who calls in and, gets hot? Let's go to Chris next. Hi, Chris.
Hey, guys. Hey, I was watching the draft and I'm thinking all the wide receivers that were taken in the draft early, I believe, or close to all of them, were Keon Coleman. 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", high vertical lead, great ball control skills, and about the same speed. So we already got one of those.
This year? You mean this year?
Yeah, we already have him on the team here. He's already got a year under his belt.
Okay. Thanks, Chris. I mean, Coleman being here and their first pick last year are reasons, or are one reason to think that this was not going to be any different this year, right? I mean, it's not surprising at all that the Bills did not pick a wide receiver on the first 2 days. They did pick one at the end of day 3. It's not surprising at all. So, different reasons for that. There was not a faller. I couldn't at 30 sit there on ship chasing and be like, right, they have to draft Ibuka. They couldn't draft Ibuka. They couldn't draft Golden. They couldn't draft McMillan. And Burden was more controversial in that spot. By the time they made the trade for 41, he was gone anyway. He went, 39 or something like that. Here's Madeline next. Hi, Madeline.
Hey guys, I listen to the morning show every morning, and so I feel like a lot of the people, like you kind of said earlier, who are kind of on Bean's side are people who don't listen to their show like him, because if you did, you would know that, I mean, those two guys were talking about defensive players in the first couple rounds for the past month. Even this morning, they were going over like, oh, all these picks were great. And of course, we're going to always talk about wide receivers because obviously our core is not ideal for what you want to get to the Super Bowl. And again, like, I think the hypocrisy of him even saying like, yeah, I haven't listened to the show. And then, you know, I don't want to necessarily prioritize a wide receiver, but then I'm going to work out Elijah Moore. And then I'm going to insult these guys by saying, oh, it's fantasy football and all this stuff. I think it's really frustrating as a fan because you're in this loop. I mean, we just did it again where we lost to the Chiefs again. And that game was a real culmination of all of the personnel mistakes that I think have happened. I mean, you have no separators up to that point in that game that could catch the ball from Allen. And so I think it's frustrating for sure as people who are super in-depth into the radio and really are interested in all the aspects and everything to kind of hear your GM say things like that. So,
well said. I mean, an executive or a coach or a star player telling the media that they don't pay attention to the media is like as old as time. That's what they say. Many times it's going to be true. Many times it's just a lie. What the Bills have, what they do or can do, is they have people who will like somebody doing their job in PR. If it somehow Brandon Beane didn't know what if they thought there was an agenda or something, but agreed to do the interview, the person in that job would every time, if they were good at it, tell Beane or whoever, listen, this is what. Just so you know, like this is what happens in there. This is what these guys think, right? They would have somebody, and that's essentially the same thing. So I don't listen to you guys. Alan just never listens to anything. But he knows, remember the year they played the Dolphins and somebody on the Dolphins said something and he scored a touchdown and he did a pose to make fun of it. But then he's always saying, like, well, I didn't know about it.
Right.
I don't know who we're playing next week. Like these guys try really hard to give off the idea that they're oblivious to any sort of possibility of criticism or anything like that. It's not usually true. And even if they didn't, somebody in the organization where they have, somebody for everything is going to brief them. That's just like how that would work. 803-0550, Sal at 4, Mike Schopp and the Bulldog, WGR. From the weekend and this morning, Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here. Sal Capacio with us in about 15 minutes. Here is Dave next. Hi, Dave.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Good.
You know, I'm just thinking that maybe one of the reasons being this a little hypersensitive these days, I don't know if you saw it, about maybe 60, 90 days ago, NFL.com ranked last year's draft class, and the Bills were the worst, only exceeded by Cleveland and Minnesota. And even your guy, Chris Trapasso, on his ranking of last year's draft class, gave the Bills a C-. There's probably a little home cooking in that grade. And then they re-ranked the wide receiver class, and Coleman was number 8 out of 8. And, you know, behind the Kaiir Elam disaster, he could be a little sensitive about criticism these days.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. I doubt, well, I don't know. Maybe he's not specifically reading those articles, but it's in the air.
It's time. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I finished the point. I might have gotten sidetracked, which happens sometimes, but it wouldn't surprise me if they are feeling a little more pressure there. You know, I don't. I'm not implying internally like that. Pagula is like, okay, guys, now or never, or anything like that. But the fan base has been restless in that way for years. And what usually happens in these things, if you don't win it, you win it all goes away. And then, you know, I don't know how long that buys you, but it usually buys you a pretty good lifeline of credit. But if you don't, more people reach that point every week, every month, every season. You're just going to get more people like, yeah, you know, this has been great, but, and there's a lot more this has been great, but out there now than there was 2 years ago. It just stands to reason if you haven't won yet. And so I don't know if what revealed itself today in any way is some manifestation of that. But we know what happened today, and we are where we are on the timeline with them, with this excellent team that's won the division 5 years running, but just can't get over. Well, really, it's 2 hurdles. I mean, they got to beat the Chiefs and then go win the Super Bowl. So, you know, there's 2 different things that have to happen there, but mostly beat the Chiefs, get to the Super Bowl, for God's sake.
Louis next. Hello.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call. Really appreciate it. You know what? I'm not going to be the guy that's going to pit myself against the DJ or the GM. First of all, I'm not doing that because it's stupid. It's useless. But what I'm going to say is this: I've been a big, long-time Bills fan for many, many years. I used to call Bulldog on the other station. He knows who I am, Louis. So my point is this: I look at football as objectively as I can. I look at strengths and weaknesses, and you know what? We scored points. We don't care how we scored the damn points, excuse my language, but we scored the points. My problem was the defense. We couldn't get people off the field if our life depended on it.
It was that bad?
All I'm saying is we have our shortcomings on defense, and we have some big ones too. So I'm not going to be the guy that's going to say the DJ's right or the.
Yeah, we got you. We heard you.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm just saying, I'm glad we did what we did.
Yep, good.
Yeah,
all right, thank you.
I like what they did too. I've said it already a few times. I really like the first 4 picks. I guess maybe I would have liked it if the 5th one was a receiver and not another cornerback. I guess. I mean, so yeah. I mean, they had things they needed to get done on that side of the ball. I just hope they're not, and like fans aren't expecting them to like just turn into a different team or something because they drafted these guys. I mean, I think there's all kinds of ways to win, of course, but there's just so much that happened today. I'm even forgetting about. We're an hour into our show here today almost, and like you can't have everything is something being said, maybe more than once today.
Another thing that never needs to be said once,
right? Or you can. I mean, what don't the Eagles have? They had this incredible defense. They've drafted really well. They have 2 receivers that they're paying. They have a quarterback that they're paying. They have a running back that they're paying. Their line is excellent. Like, dude, don't tell on yourself. Like, somebody in the league has everything right now, and they just kick the crap out of the team you can't beat.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think it's adjacent to the palm trees. You know, you just never. It just sounds like an excuse, doesn't help you. We can't have everything. All right, well, I guess. But is anybody saying you should? The Eagles are a fair point. Is anybody saying you should have everything? The point isn't you should have everything. The point is we want you. I'm not even happy with we. The people making the argument think you should acknowledge wide receiver is more important than you do by your actions and today your words. Whether, no matter what you sounded like, that's the complaint. That, analytics, not that it's only analytics, will tell you that like the wide receiver position is massively important and interior defensive line isn't. So what is the Bills act and talk like they don't think there's really a difference. And I think, for me at least, I'm not trying to speak for anyone else. For me at least, that's the objection. That one of these times we want the Bills to sort of wake up to, okay, let's just go. Put the pedal down and throw the ball down the field. And they've done plenty of that, and they've done well. I feel like I have to say that every time. Like it sounds like I wouldn't know. But that's it. Just elevate the position to where, I think it belongs. And I think that's provable. And defensive tackles, if you don't get one, what happens? You get run on by Kansas City? That's what you want. You want to play Kansas City and have them run the ball between the tackles. You don't put a defensive tackle on the field and see what they do. Sal Capacio next. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog, WGR.
The 2025 NFL Draft is in the books. The Bills made 9 selections, and earlier today, Bills general manager Brandon Beane, he joined our morning show. It did include a heated conversation to begin, as Beane appeared to take offense to some of the criticisms regarding the wide receiver room.
I'd love to play fantasy football, but there's one football. You can't give it, but so many people. I don't understand this narrative. I felt it a little bit from a couple of the reporters and the thing. Like, our job is to score points. It doesn't matter what receivers, what quarterback. If you score points at the level we scored, that is winning football.
You can listen to that entire conversation up at our website, WGR550.com, over on the Odyssey app, or on our YouTube page under WGR Sports Radio 550. The Bills, though, could be adding to their wide receiver room, as being later confirmed with One Bills Live that they are having free agent Elijah Moore in for a visit. Moore had a career high in catches last season with the Browns at 61. He also had 538 yards and 1 touchdown, and he's just 25 years old. Stay tuned, as coming up next, Sal Capacio will join the show to help us break down more from what the Bills did this weekend for the 2025 draft class. The Pittsburgh Penguins are making a coaching change for the first time in 10 years. Mike Sullivan and the club have agreed to part ways. After making the playoffs the first 7 years of his tenure, Sullivan failed to do so the last 3. Staying with hockey, we have 2 games tonight at 7. The Panthers are up 2-1 on Tampa. Then at 9:30, it's Game 5 of Colorado Stars. It's in Dallas. That series is tied at 2 games apiece. Then 2 games as well in the NBA. The Cavs are looking for the sweep of the Heat at 7:30. Then at 10, the Warriors host the Rockets and lead that series 2-1. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet, celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
Making the decision here, although I'm not sure it's the right one, I'm going to go with it, as Sal Capacio joins us on the West Her Hotline, Mike Schopp and the Bulldog, to start with the players the Bills actually did draft. What do you think?
What a crazy idea.
What do you think?
I can hear radios being turned off by the dozens.
I know. Who is this TJ Sanders? Sal, you called it. 3 defensive players with the first 3 picks. That happened. It might have even included the defensive tackle you thought in your mock draft that the Bills might pick at 30. He went at 28 instead. So good job on that. Did they go too far? Do you think that some of the pushback, if that's really it, this weekend, today, this morning, about their draft is that they kept going with another defensive player, another corner? You know, for most of the draft, there were ultimately 3 offensive players picked.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thanks, guys. Yeah, and I've been saying for a month and a half, I thought 2 defensive linemen in a corner, so that worked out. I just didn't have the order quite right, but you never know. Maybe it would have been that way if Tyleik Williams had fallen to pick number 30, but you know, they did concentrate on defense. It was even more heavy than I expected. I expected 3 defenders in the first 3 picks, as I said frequently, and then getting into, day number 3, it continued that way. 6 of their first 7 were defensive players. Did they go too far? Of course, that's a perspective that you could have. I mean, I understand why people would say that. But look, I mean, again, bringing to the Bills' perspective what they think, they clearly made a statement here. This is a statement. I wrote about this at WGR550.com. My reaction article was basically, it was like Oprah handing out cars. You get a car, you get a car, you get a car. Brandon Beane handing out defensive players to his coaching staff. You get a defender, and you get a defender, and you get a defender. And it just kept going. And I think what the Bills did here, if you go back all the way from really March, when free agency started, through the draft, you look at their roster, you look at their turnover, it's understandable because they've had so many returning players on offense versus defense. They have made a clear statement that they need to really kind of change this defense much more than the offense.
Yeah, and I think I can see where they accomplished that, Sal. I mean, I think all 4 of the top 4 guys they picked, Hairston, Sanders, Jackson, and Walker, 2 of those 4, Sanders and Walker being defensive tackles, at the least have an opportunity to be part of a rotation right away. this season, and if who knows, if not more. So, like, on one hand, sure, I wanted a receiver at some point before the very last pick that they owned, but I kind of like those first 4 picks. I think they really did address holes they had in their roster.
Yeah, so you're not going to cut a 5th-round pick or below. I mean, that just doesn't happen, right? I mean, I think maybe I've heard of 1 5th-round pick getting cut in the last few years, or maybe a couple over the league, but it just doesn't happen. So you can safely say that the guys drafted anywhere from 5th round and below that are going to make the team. And then from there, I think once you go and take a defensive tackle in the 4th round, he's probably playing. I mean, he's going to see time. If not, he's inactive on game day, which could happen. In this particular player, that could happen, Deion Walker, because he is recovering from a back injury. Now, the Bills said, Brandon Beane said, he could play a game today if they had a game, but they're going to take it slow with him. They want to make sure he's right and he's set, and I understand that. Now, to your point, Bulldog, of the guys they took early to contribute, I agree with that. The only thing that kind of surprised me with all of this, taken into account, was I thought they would go for a bigger body or a little bit earlier because that's not TJ Sanders.
Right.
TJ Sanders is more of a 3 technique, right? He's more of a penetrator. He's a guy that really is known for his pass rush, getting up the field. And then when you get to Deion Walker, there's more of the body of the 1 technique, but there is question about whether he can handle the 1 technique at the NFL level, because if you watch last year especially, he was very high when he plays because he's an athlete. And he's able to play different spots on the D-line. He's not a low enough type of player. That being said, that could possibly be attributed to his back injury. Brandon Beane said, and I got this today, by the way. This isn't just Brandon Beane. I want everybody to know, today on the Extra Point Show, I interviewed a guy who followed him and covered him at Kentucky, and he said this is 100% accurate, that this guy's 2023 tape was off the charts, and he could have been a 1st or 2nd round pick. He came back, and he just was not the same player, and it was most likely due to the back injury they found out on his pro day really was what was going on in there. So that being said, I agree. And then, of course, Landon Jackson, a 3rd round pick that I think, is going to have a really nice NFL career. This is a great fit for the Buffalo Bills. I heard you earlier, Bulldog. I agree with you. This might be my favorite pick of the draft just because of, I think, what this guy can be, an immediate and in the future.
Also heard your conversation with a guest from South Carolina mentioning that Walker at Kentucky was a game wrecker 2 years ago in their game against South Carolina. I don't know. I know we can't know what like everybody's board looked like, but can you accept needing to trade up 15 spots for Sanders? Like, was he odds on not going to last to them? What their options could have been? I want to bring up the trade because it's one of these where that's a pretty big move in round 2. And I don't know, is it a player they could have lived without? Is it a player that maybe they could have even picked? Not that we can really know that later.
I know how you love the trade-ups, Mike, right? I know it's like you figure you might be able to get a player comparable or maybe even wait to him for another 15 picks. But obviously the Bills really liked him enough that they felt they needed to do that. A lot of times what this comes down to and what Brandon Beane and others have explained, and you guys know this, but in its simplest form is there might be such a drop-off that if you don't get that guy, the next guy isn't worth it. So are we going to take that chance? What if he does go 10 picks from now, then the next guy isn't there's a drop off there. So if we need that position and that guy's ranked high enough, we need to go up and get him. And I think that's what happens a lot of times. And that's why you probably saw what you saw. On top of the fact that they did have the capital, they had 10 picks. They probably know that, it's going to be tough for 10 guys to make it. You're a little bit more okay with, moving around a little bit, giving up one of those picks. You got back into the 3rd round. You're not, you're back into a spot where you weren't, and now you have another pick there. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, we'll see. I would tell you this. There were a lot of people who thought the Bills could take TJ Sanders in the 1st round, right? I mean, I didn't see him mocked a ton there, but people talked about it, like as a name that was brought up. So if you go from that standpoint, it seems like it's a fit at 41 and not bad value there.
You can't know, and we're saying that there was only one defensive tackle picked between Sanders and when they would have picked at 56, and that was right away. Alfred Collins, who we talked about for a minute on Friday, went at 43. So, one circumstantial piece to this would be, well, if there were run-on tackles,
right.
There were 3 that were picked right after 56, however.
Yeah, and it might be the way this Sanders reads on paper to me, Sal, is like maybe I haven't gone back and looked at to line this up and cross-reference it with the guys that were also still there that Mike is talking about, but Sanders, I thought you're not getting someone who can penetrate up the field at 30, probably. Like, those guys are going to go earlier. And this guy sort of slipped through the cracks and maybe represented the last opportunity to get a guy that could play that. I think the most questionable thing about his selection, recognizing it's a round earlier, is that it's sort of like a Dwayne Carter. Like, Dwayne Carter's supposed to be an Ed Oliver backup, right? Like, he's a rotational piece, similar style, and now I'm doing that again. And I might wonder, like, what's going on with Dwayne Carter? Did that not work out well enough, or what? Not to say competition isn't good, but it feels sort of like a duplicate. If Carter had been a successful piece for them last year, I wonder if they make this pick.
He was a healthy scratch a little bit down the stretch. I think that had a lot to do with the wrist injury when he came back. He just didn't have that power in his wrist.
Yeah.
Right? But you do have to wonder, do they feel, really good about him being able to kind of be the same player? I don't think it has to be an indictment on him, because I would say it this way too, that it's a good point you bring up, Bulldog, and it reminds me, because Brandon Beane said that this is before they took TJ, Brandon Beane said they could see Dwayne Carter also being a backup one technique. And then you're like, I don't know if he can do that, but he said that. Then they take TJ Sanders, and he's not a true one technique, right? He's another guy, so it kind of puts you in the same boat there. And then what he said, and this is a great point you brought up, because his quote was, it's a lot harder to find penetrating defensive linemen like this than it is to find two down nose tackles, a true one technique. And that's right. And that, to you, what your point is, yeah, like, okay, we got this guy. Like, he's the best interior pass rusher on the board. Maybe he's really one of the best, maybe the best interior pass rusher in the draft, to be quite honest with you guys, right? So that's hard to find. Let's go get him right now. So, yeah, I think, and by the way, I mean, I don't think that anybody, like, doesn't love Ed Oliver in the Bills building, but there was a lot of talk last year that Ed just wasn't the same player, and he, had a lot of, we've asked Brandon Beane or Sean McDermott about that, and this is also a little bit more of, okay, let's push out Oliver a little bit maybe. That's, hey, let's get some insurance here if this doesn't work out long-term for a player that we're paying pretty nicely.
With Sal Capacio, so again, it was a defense-heavy draft, and that's really not surprising. This morning, from Beane, we got a tell us how you really feel moments here, to put it one way, with Beane and Jeremy and Joe on our morning show. He said, as he was almost ranting, how reporters over the weekend maybe set him off a little. There might have been something that he sort of was recognizing, or even maybe reaching a breaking point when it came to hearing about why no wide receiver here. Again, this has been years, Sal. And, if I were Beane, to be like, did you not see the last 2 years, by the way? But anyway, how did it sound to you, and did you see it coming at all?
He did kind of say that, but he said just maybe about last year, right? He said to Jeremy and Joe, he said, like, I get people asking me last year because we moved on from Stephon Diggs, but did you not watch last year? They scored 30 points a game, and it was fine. Like, it was good. It was really good. So he did say that. That was, his defense for not taking a wide receiver. I think that today was a culmination of a lot of that, though. You're right, Mike. Like, he did. It wasn't, I was in the room, and I go back and think about any questions that were asked. And he was asked a little bit about, do you have enough in the wide receiver room? And this has been a question all offseason and being asked to him. And I think that there probably comes a point with anybody where when you continually get those questions, and they're questions, but kind of also disguised as criticism in a little bit, right? In a way, right? I think that's what's happening. And you've done the work, and you've put in, and you literally were set franchise records for scoring points, and we're the highest scoring team in the league, like he said, that at some point you hear that again as you're about to go on a radio station, and you're like, you know what? I'm tired of it. I'm just going to say, I'm tired of hearing about this. Like, what do you not like about the fact that we just scored 31 points a game last year, right? That's what we did. I think what's happening here, a lot of it is that, yes, there's 31 points a game. I think people, I guess, are debating maybe they don't like how you got there, right? And I think to the Bills, they don't care how they get there.
I don't.
We're scoring 31 points a game.
I want to tell you,
dude, what do you care? Yeah. What do you care if James Cook scored 25 rushing touchdowns? Right? And we didn't have the league MVP.
Absolutely correct. I don't care how they get their points. I care about whether it's sustainable or not. Like, can they keep doing it year over year the way that they did it? And look, I referred to last year as the first great experiment of Josh Allen's career, right? We're gonna try to do this without a number one guy and see how it goes. And they got a few games into the season and went and traded for a number one guy. So, like, that's still in my head. Like I said earlier, Sal, to me, a part of my desire for them to supplement what they already have here in the draft this year is based on that they themselves last October went out and traded for Amari Cooper. And then Bean and McDermott both were pretty hard on and talked somewhat like tough on Coleman and Kincaid both needing to do more, to be more ready, be healthier, stronger, bigger, whatever it is, learn how to handle some adversity in the case of an injury, in Coleman's case. And all of those things to me are little clues. I mean, I can misinterpret them. That's certainly possible. But I myself felt like Bean's comments this offseason pushed me more to, of course, they'll add somebody before pick 200 and whatever.
240.
240, thank you. So that's a part of it to me, too, that I'm having trouble sort of rectifying, I guess.
Okay, so I'll take them one at a time. I think the Cooper point is right. It's valid. It's real. I think that's more, to me, I look back and think it was more of a, what particular kind of piece of the puzzle do we not have? And Amari Cooper was a guy, hey, we needed somebody to take a little bit more attention away from the other guys. He's not a separator down the field, but he knows how to run routes, get separation. They kind of went out, and what they did was they got a guy in Josh Palmer who's very good in those metrics, right? So when you look at losing Cooper and bringing in Palmer, they're kind of trying to replicate that, which is now we got a guy that can actually get some separation through route running, whatever, maybe take some attention away. But you're right. I mean, they did do that. That's not a thing they didn't do. I don't think it was an indictment on the entire wide receiver core necessarily from his eyes. I think it is, we're missing this one piece to the puzzle in a wide receiver core, so we're going to go out and get that particular guy. I think the second part, though, I would say, Bulldog, maybe going a little too far, thinking that, okay, I'm going to say this about Coleman and Kincaid. I don't think that means they're sour on them in any way. I just think it's the reality of, hey, these are young players, and we kind of need to get them to a better spot next year. But that's everybody involved. That's the training staff. That's the coaching staff. That's them together. But it would have stunned me, and as I said to you guys for the last couple of months, if they would have overdrafted Keon Coleman. Like, they just, as a second-round pick a year ago, the first pick of the second round, their first pick overall, I think that is, they're still all in on him, but it is still a bunch of faith in saying we believe he can still be this guy that we're talking about here that we didn't quite get at the end of the year.
You know, it's commitment. And I'm less fired up about a perceived lack of commitment by the team at the position. I think it's a good debate. I think there's merit when you compare it to defensive line. You know, the cap space they've used on defense. They've poured tons of money into defense previous to even this draft. But I think for me, Sal, the bottom line is how good are any of them, right? Like, you're drafting, it's two things, and there's only so much you can know. But you're drafting for a position because we need this. That's part of Bean's argument today and always is we felt like for our team we needed to address over here. But how good is Coleman? How good is Kincaid? How good is Palmer? How good was Cooper? Right? You're making an evaluation on a guy and high hopes, but he didn't produce. So that's really what's adding up here, I think, and adding to the frustration on this topic is, all right, well, I accept that you've made some of these draft picks, but who's my guy that I can trust with the game on the line?
How good is a guy who could draft, too, though, Mike, right? I mean, I think that's part of it. He even said in the interview he didn't think this was a particularly great class. So what are you doing if you draft a guy? Are you bringing him in and just adding him to a mix of what you just talked about? Because how good can he really be? Is he going to beat out? I mean, Brandon Bean was, you know, the people who say, like, he was honest, he was, and not just the emotionally honest, I think the football honest. I've said this, you guys know. If he said this right out, like, who's he playing over? Like, if you go, he said, if you have your top four of Shakir, Coleman, Palmer, and Samuel, that's a good 4 wide receiver core. Like, where's a guy going? Where's he going to play? People forget. He says, Samuel, we can have that debate. There's no doubt. And I'm sure people are listening going, oh, come on, Curtis Samuel stinks. Oh, come on, he can't get on the field. He had an injury. I understand that. I respect that. I'm just telling you from a Bills standpoint that they have a lot of faith that Curtis Samuel is going to be a much better player because he'll be healthier, and Keon Coleman is going to understand the rigors of the NFL better and take care of his body better and be better coming back from an injury, and Dalton Kincaid did play hurt. So to me, if you add all of that up, I think that's why he comes at it from a standpoint he does, which is, okay, like you want me to go draft a guy, but what is that guy going to do for us anyway, to be quite honest with you?
Yeah, there's a lot of merit to that. I've said to the first 2 rounds, when and who was it supposed to be? Nobody fell. I mean, mock draft sometimes would have Golden or McMillan at 30. That did not happen on Friday night. And, Saturday they make the move up, but even Burden is gone by that point. And it was what Bean, I think, would you disagree? By what he said and how he sounded today, he's telling you that was not the plan, which that's one thing that was revealed here by how he talked was instead of the usual, and maybe he did actually get to this too later, but we looked at it, we're open to it, all of that. He basically, by getting hot, he's like, we needed this other thing more, and would you guys cut it out? Right? So
right.
It was like the facade was gone that, maybe this would have fallen, this would have happened, and he did go back to say that, but come on, no. It was not going to, like you said, and a lot of people also felt like this was going to be a defensive draft, and it was.
Yeah, it was not the plan. The plan was to add to the defense. The plan was to get better on defense. The plan was to kind of, shore up that side of the ball. For all of what Brandon Bean said, which he's right, he does have scoreboard here when he says we scored 31 points a game, right? And like for all that is correct and factual. Also add in, for the first time in 4 years, the Bills dropped out of the top 10 in defensive points allowed and defensive yards allowed. They were not good on third down defense. Like, these are real things that if you're in charge of a football team, you have to think about, right? Get the ball back for your quarterback. You want to score more points? How about we get the ball back on third down, right? I mean, these are ways that, you have to think if you're building a football team, and I understand that from his standpoint. Look, I mean, we also know that they are bringing in Elijah Moore for a look. Last year, they signed Chase Claypool on May 3rd. They signed MVS on May 14th. The door doesn't have to be closed to still adding more guys, but the guys you add are still going to be guys that are not guaranteed to make this team, and let's see what they can do once they get here and get in the mix.
There are players who have just not been good in the NFL. And that includes Moore. Moore was a good prospect and a high draft pick, but he has not been good in the NFL. And that, again, is the point about what do the Bills really think about how much is necessary to invest in the position. And I'm not telling you anything you don't know. It's not the number of players. We've had conversations together where you brought up Shavers and other guys. It's not how many bodies. It's like, do you have the right ones? And ultimately, that's how you get judged, right? I mean, wins and losses. But that position group, we'll find out this year, not for a few months, obviously, but we'll find out this year just whether they have the right pieces. Is Samuel actually good in the NFL at this point? And, this was Hollins, too. What is his value? And he had some. Who's your favorite of their picks? Like, just sort of personally, or I heard you talking about the guy who went to Yale today a little bit.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I think my favorite from a football standpoint, what he might be able to be, is Landon Jackson. But I really am intrigued by Jackson Hawes. And the reason is because, and I said this earlier today, and I'm going to say this to you guys right now, I'm going to make a prediction that this is your new extra offensive lineman. Yeah. I think Alec Anderson now becomes a guy who actually fights for a spot. I mean, Alec Anderson could be a regular backup. You can still use in that role. But to me now, the Bills, they're going to lean in even more what they did last year at a very high level and very successfully, which is run 6 offensive linemen. And the extra guy this time is going to be a guy that doesn't have to run up to the official and say, I'm reporting eligible. He literally is eligible by his number, and then he can go out for a pass, and he's going to be on the field. Yes, and I love the fact that he did go to Yale for 5 years. He has an economics degree from Yale. He then went to Georgia Tech to get to the NFL. That's why he did it. And he says he loves that style of game. He loves to be violent. He loves to block people, and he'll help on special teams. So for that reason, I very much like him, yes.
All right, Sal. Great work over the last few days. We'll talk again soon.
You got it, guys. Thank you.
All right, it's our man Sal Capacio on the Wester Hotline. His appearances are always brought to you by New York's only outlet liquor. When you need to stock up, it's the place to buy a case. What's your outlet?
We will look for your calls again next on the draft, on the general manager, and a heated conversation he had with our morning team earlier today. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here. This is WGR.
is in the books, and the Bills made 9 selections. Bills general manager Brandon Beane was on our morning show today. It did include a bit of a heated conversation to begin. If you did miss any of that, you can find it on our website, WGR550.com, the Odyssey app, or on our YouTube page under WGR Sports Radio 550. The Bills, though, may not be done adding to their team, especially the wide receiver room, as Beane later confirmed with One Bills Live that they are having free agent Elijah Moore in for a visit. Moore had a career high in catches last season with Cleveland, 61. He also had 538 yards and 1 touchdown, and is still just 25 years old. The Pittsburgh Penguins are making a change at coach for the first time in 10 years. Mike Sullivan and the club have agreed to part ways. After making the playoffs the first 7 years of his tenure, Sullivan has failed to do so in the last 3. We do have playoff hockey tonight, just 2 games. At 7, the Panthers are up 2-1 on Tampa. Then at 9:30, it's Game 5 of Colorado and the Stars. It's in Dallas, and the series is tied at 2 games apiece. Then also 2 games in the NBA. The Cavs are looking for their sweep of the Heat at 7:30. Then at 10, the Warriors host the Rockets, and they lead that series 2-1. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Headlines. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
Elijah Moore is here. He's a guy we've spoken to a few times leading up to the draft, and we just kind of put a pin in it, just like we did several other positions, and said, hey, let's wait till the draft and see where we're at, see if he's still interested. If we took a guy in the first or second round, he's probably not too interested. Yeah. But we didn't, and so we picked up those conversations over the weekend. He and his wife came up today and visited, and so we'll see. Nothing imminent today, anything like that, but a very good visit, and we'll see where that goes.
Bills GM Brandon Beane on One Bills Live there, confirming Elijah Moore's visit. No running back picked at all.
Nope.
A lot of teams without running back needs were doing it. The Bills may or may not think they have a need. They probably don't. But with or without any perceived James Cook concern, they stayed out of it. Man, running back. There were so many guys, as predicted. Day 2, day 3, it was kind of flooded.
Yeah. I kind of thought all along, if they were going to do something early, then there's your warning that something's wrong. Them not doing it was very foreseeable. If anything, it could have been a flyer on Saturday late, like just any of these guys that they picked. But I don't know, like that depth chart, if Cook is to be, assumed as here and ready to do what he did last year or some semblance thereof, that depth chart looked almost impenetrable to me.
As you were saying many times, why did they need to pick one at all?
Right.
John is next. Hi, John.
Hey, hello, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure, you're welcome.
Great show. Yeah, thank you. And I just want to comment from the show this morning and a lot what you gentlemen have been talking about. First off, hats off to Jeremy and Joe from this morning for keeping their composure and their professionalism, considering the way that the Bills GM came out swinging. Some quick points. As far as the defense, I know we went really heavy defensively this year, but I think what point can't be lost is the big picture. Previous draft picks, as recent as last year with Wayne Carter, who was inactive, Kyrie Elam, who couldn't crack the starting lineup. So my take on going heavy on defense for this year, especially the secondary, it makes sense because we were so poor. But we were so poor because of the moves that are made the past 3 or 4 years defensively that have not worked out. So I don't think Brandon Beane gets the pass for me on that because he's drafted poorly defensively the last handful of years. A.J. Panessa, Boogie Basham. So now we're forced to redraft defensively 3 or 4 years later for the guys that failed previously. And one more point that I want to make as well. I'm not sure Brandon Beane, I know he watched last year's Super Bowl, and the Eagles' defense was really solid, but I don't think he watched the Eagles' offense. And A.J. Brown, first-round pick, Devontae Smith, first-round pick. He talked about Kelsey today. He's a Hall of Famer. If I recall correctly, most teams that have won the Super Bowl have had at least one primary offensive target. Even the Patriots, not many receivers, but hey, Gronk's a Hall of Famer. And we don't have that. And I'm very frustrated as a Bills fan that the receiving core is so weak and there's been so little invested in it. And I think he's feeling the heat. He's feeling the pressure from the fan base. And, those are my points, guys.
Okay.
Thanks for my call, and have a good one.
Thanks, John.
Yep. I mean, I don't know. It stands to reason that he'd be feeling some heat. They've had a very smooth ride here, these guys. I mean, almost no real trouble. I mean, the odd thing here or there, sure. But they put fires out more than a lot of organizations, effectively more, I think. You know, as much as the Diggs thing was a thing, I feel like an organization like the Dallas Cowboys, that thing would have been, I mean, it would have been three tents full of circus performers. So they've been, you know, in their lane, so to speak. Not say like they you know, they have to stay in it, but it's not a rough ride. And now we're here, you know, it's been 5 division titles in a row, and it's another elimination at the hands of the Chiefs. And yes, the receiver that you let the Chiefs draft in front of you had a better year than your guy. It makes sense. I mean, that they or he would be feeling a little more edgy because the fan base is edgy. I don't know where the owner is in all of this, but, you know, these jobs,
anyone.
These jobs don't last forever, and they might feel over there like they got to win something more than they have won so far, at least an AFC title, to sort of earn the right to keep going. And so maybe that's manifesting itself in some way with being sort of snapping, if that's not too lazy a way to put it.
I think it's fair. Joe is next. Hi, Joe.
Hey, fellas, long-time listener. Love the show. Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome.
I was listening this morning with Bean, and I don't find it the biggest reaction of the Bills draft weekend by no means. It was surprising because it was uncharacteristic for Bean, but it makes you think how many years this was brewing. Hardly the worst soundbite NFL exec has said. But to defend him real quick, we can all say what if and what not, but for argument's sake, if the Bills kept their first-round pick in 24 and drafted Xavier Worthy instead of Coleman in the second. If you compare Coleman's stats to a 17-game season Ed Worthy had, it's very similar, more similar. I mean, still 100 yards off, more receptions. But I feel like we'd still be saying the same thing about this wide receiver room this year. We have Worthy, the speed guy, but what about a big target in the end zone, someone Josh can throw fade-outs to, for instance? Maybe that's supposed to be Kincaid. I don't know. Talking wide receiver, I mean, maybe Justin Shorter. My point being, we'd probably still make an argument that the wide receiver room could use a player with intangibles like Coleman. So I'm not going to give Bean a hard time for the call. He's sticking with his guys. Would a speedy third-round wide receiver this draft that Bean admitted they didn't find that deep really make the Bills' offense that much better than what they had last year? Realistically, probably not. So I like that their expectations for Coleman. We'll see how it performs this season. Thanks for taking my call, guys.
Thanks, Joe. If it's not unfair, what I would change about that is, and let's use Worthy, is how it ended. And that's not only his escalation down the stretch and through the playoffs, but it's the head-to-head. It's Worthy and Coleman on the same field in the AFC Championship, and one had a day. So I want to think of it a little bit more in the micro. The Bills almost definitely doing anything different in this draft, offense instead of defense, would not average 31 points a game next year. They were very fortunate on turnovers. It's not to say they weren't good, but both on offense and defense, field position, like they weren't so bad on defense either that they were losing a lot, and they still put up that number. They weren't chasing, and they still did it. It's going to be tough to replicate that. That isn't much to say. So what I want, whoever, Luther Burden, one of my guys. Why do I want Luther Burden instead of another defensive lineman? Because in that game next time, I have a better chance of making that play. I don't know who I have that's actually good, and who I have that I'm going to want to throw the ball to next time when I need to drive to beat Kansas City. Is it going to be Kincaid again? We just did that. Maybe, when Sal ran down the list, everybody had an injury excuse. Okay, we've done that before. That's maybe what I would do, not to say Sal, but that's maybe what I would do if I were the team. It's like, actually, he had an elbow. Actually, he had, I'm not saying it's not true necessarily. It's just like, okay, Kincaid, Coleman, yet to be good in the NFL. Samuel, just okay, and who knows where he's at. Palmer, just okay, and you didn't add to it. And if it's Amari Cooper, somehow, again, same. If it's Elijah Moore, same. So whether it's because of a commitment or a perceived lack of commitment at the position or just the choices you made at the position, do you have it? Do you have the sauce? And in Worthy, it looks like the Chiefs do. Not to mention Rice from the year before.
Right. Yeah, when I said a few minutes ago, like, I'm not worried about how they score points, right? A caller used that phrasing. It doesn't matter how they get their points. And like, I don't care how they get their points. What I care about is whether it's repeatable or not. Okay, and look, I know it's sports. I mean, there's always going to be variables and things that change. But the turnover stuff is a real thing that you should not expect to have. Look, you can expect to concentrate on it and do your work on it and think that gives you enough of an edge that you're going to be better at it than the average donkey. Okay, great. Are you going to be so great at it like you were last year to only turn it over 8 times and take it away as much as you did? Like, that can really trim the margins to me of what they were on offense and how they managed to accomplish all that they accomplished statistically on offense without this one player, this witch. And again, look, I'm not delusional to think that they were going to find that guy in the 4th round of this draft. But you do avail yourself of the opportunity to get a guy that outplays his draft status, maybe even right away.
Right, they definitely won't this way.
If you pick one, but if you don't, you're just stuck. Stuck isn't the right way to put it. You just don't. You're not giving yourself that chance, and that, I think, is a lot of it. Like, I appreciate that they have scoreboard right now on the wins, on the division titles, and even on the offense and points scored. But is that bankable, or as bankable as you would feel comfortable with? That's really it. Because what is bankable truly, right?
Allen.
Right. But I think more, you got to keep going. And I don't know, I just really was surprised to hear him so defensive, I think, is what I want about it.
Let's go to, Adam next. Hi, Adam.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Good, thank you.
So I listened to this morning, and I'm surprised no one brought this part of the interview up. Toward the end of the interview, Bean was basically, I'm siding with Jeremy on this and the media, because he said there's only one football. And then he brings up the fact that it's hard to satisfy, and that position, implying the wide receiver position, is hard to satisfy. It sounds like, A, he's gun-shy about finding a top wide receiver, and 2, it sounds like this whole Diggs situation is living rent-free in his head by saying that comment. That's what that says to me, and to take it out on the media, like, all due respect, guys, like, he's the Buffalo Bills GM. He needs to hold himself a little better than that, than just coming down on a couple of radio DJs. Like, I think it's a little weird how he came across. I don't know if he just woke up on the wrong side of the bed. That's what he sounded like, but that's my opinion.
Okay.
I'd like to hear what you guys have to say.
Thanks, Adam. I don't think about Diggs at all. I mean, that was an alpha that he traded for, and that went extremely well. So he hasn't been, gun-shy? Historically, that was trading a first-round pick for a guy that you want to make your number one, and he was correct in thinking that would happen. It was a good bet. I think it's just right in fit with everything since Joe Brady took over. Like, it's power football now. I thought going into last season, that's how they would play because it worked for them when Brady took over the previous year. It is what they did, and it went very well. Even in the playoffs, they averaged 29 points a game in 3 games against great teams. So never were they going to consider that a failure. Defense more need, et cetera, et cetera. Do they, this is an opinion, and I think the answer is clearly no. Do they recognize wide receiver as one of the most important positions in the sport, maybe as high as second? Apparently not, because what Bean gave you today was never ever were they going to pick one in the first 2 days of this draft. Like, I'm sick of hearing about it. It was not going to happen. We needed other things more. We're trying to build a team here, not play fantasy. By the way, fantasy is an easy mark. Anything having to do with stats is, fantasy football. If he actually had thought about it, and maybe he did, the fantasy point is we don't it doesn't have to be one guy that you can start in your lineups.
Just more guys.
It's more, like last year's team, again, was successful as a team that did not have that. You want to start any of them, except for Cook and Allen. So look at the money. We're going to talk about this a lot. It's already kind of been, we thought, played out, but nope. Because, hey, fan the flames again. Look at the money they have invested at their receiver. It's a lot. It's not the most. Samuel and Palmer and Shakir, I didn't mean to leave him out before. I think he is good. I don't think he's great. Coleman with the draft status. Knox, don't forget about that contract either. That's a skill position, isn't it?
I believe that is correct, yes.
803-0550. We'll keep rolling. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog. Thanks for listening to WGR. The Bulldog, if you missed the controversial interview this morning, Brandon Bean on with Jeremy White, Joe DiBiase, find it on the Odyssey app or at WGR550.com or in about 7,000 places on Twitter, as it has attracted interest from all over the league. Media and fans from all over the league. Next up, we have David. Hi, David.
Hey, guys. I appreciate taking my call. Love the show. Listen every day.
Thank you.
I have two things to say. Number one, I wanted to just my thought on this morning was that I didn't really think Brandon Bean's comments were directed necessarily right at Jeremy and Joe. I think he was probably, the first show he went on after the draft, took a lot of his frustrations out based on a lot of the interviews that he had done. And I just didn't see it as he was sort of attacking them personally. Okay. That's just my thought on that. The other thing that I wanted to sort of bring up that you guys have been talking a little bit about is this whole Xavier Worthy, Keon Coleman thing. And I just wanted to say, I think this is more of a Mahomes thing than it is a Worthy thing. If you look at a lot of the receivers that have played in Kansas City and left Kansas City, you got Mecole Hardman, Juju Smith-Schuster, MVS, all these guys left after being productive in Kansas City and did almost nothing to the next spot that they went. And in that particular game, it wasn't until Christian Benford actually went out of the game until Worthy started padding a lot of his stats with like 5 straight receptions, I think, against Kaiir Elam, if I'm not mistaken. And so I just think that had a lot more to do with it. But I think this is Mahomes just makes everybody look better no matter who they have there, as opposed to this being purely a Worthy is better than Keon Coleman, and we shouldn't have done that trade.
What do we do? What do we do with Allen in this formula?
Good question.
I mean,
Allen also elevates everybody that he seems to play with, which is why a lot of people think he has a weak wide receiver room, but he still makes these guys look good. I think it's very similar. I just am saying the comparison. I think that Keon Coleman, healthy, whether he gets his head straight, physically has all the ability to be that receiver. It's just if he can put it all together. I'm just specifically saying that a lot of people sort of are comparing him and Worthy.
Sure.
And I just sort of think that this is more of a Mahomes seems to elevate these guys because when they leave, they seem to do not as much as when they're there.
Well, you've conveniently left the best receiver he's played with and who's gone on to have a fantastic career. Say what you will about him away from the football and whether he wants to keep playing for Miami, but Tyreek Hill, Exhibit A. Mike asked the right question there. You're saying Mahomes elevates, but like what, Allen can't? I don't know. That sounds like you want maybe too many things out of one point. And look, Worthy outperformed Coleman. That's okay. It's not a one-year race, right? So we'll have some time here, but the early returns are not good. And the Bills' position and Bean's position within it, choosing to make the transaction that they made at the draft last year is only going to cause you to have more attention drawn to it. It's natural. It's not even, to me, inappropriate. It's absolutely what you should do. It's sports. We let you have that guy. Some people here wanted that guy. They've got him. How's he doing? How's our guy doing? Who won? That's it.
Yeah, and it was a brave, to put it one way, trade. And Bean knows that when he makes it. This is the Chiefs, who just beat us in the playoffs, and then they ran it back and did it again with these two guys. One guy goes 6 for 85 and a touch. The other guy goes 1 for 12. Like, the Bills, right back to trading the pick for Mahomes, right? The Bills have been at the same time so great, but also fate has been so cruel to them in a couple of these ways where this one team they can't beat. It's 4 times now in the playoffs in 5 years, and 3 of them are super close games, the last 3, and it's one play here, one play there. If I'm Bean, I'm sensitive about Coleman. Maybe I'm worried. Same on Kincaid, who was an earlier draft pick, and it's been okay. He's not Travis Kelce, and that people were kind of hoping to see some version of Travis Kelce when they drafted Kincaid, but the timing's been off, and I don't know. I'm absolutely with you, though. I don't think it's unfair at all to make these certain comparisons because they're obvious. Thanks, David. We'll talk some more after sports. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog, WGR.
The 2025 NFL Draft is in the books. The Bills did make 9 selections, and earlier today, Bills general manager Brandon Beane, he did join our morning show. That did include a spirited conversation to start. Beane appeared to take some offense to some of the criticisms regarding the Bills wide receiver room.
I'd love to play fantasy football, but there's one football. You can't give it, but so many people. I don't understand this narrative. I felt it a little bit from a couple of the reporters in the thing. Like, our job is to score points. It doesn't matter what receivers, what quarterback. If you score points at the level we scored, that is winning football.
You can listen to that entire conversation up at our website, WGR550.com, the Odyssey app, or on our YouTube page under WGR Sports Radio 550. The Bills, though, could be adding to their wide receiver room. Being later confirmed on One Bills Live that they are having free agent Elijah Moore in on a visit. Moore, still just 25, had a career high in catches last season with Cleveland at 61. He also had 538 yards and 1 touchdown. Pittsburgh Penguins are making a coaching change, the first time in 10 years. Mike Sullivan and the club have agreed to part ways, and after making the playoffs for the first 7 years of his tenure, Sullivan failed to do so in the last 3. Staying with hockey, 2 playoff games tonight at 7. The Panthers are up 2-1 on Tampa. Then at 9:30, it's Game 5 of Colorado and the Stars in Dallas. That series is tied at 2 games apiece. Then 2 games in the NBA. The Cleveland Cavaliers are looking for the sweep of the Heat at 7:30. And then at 10, the Warriors host the Rockets. They lead that series 2-1. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
And the Bulldog.
If you wrap foil around that, just like the little bit of the base part of the banana where the fruit is, wrap foil around that top and they will last longer.
You know, I'm something of a scientist myself.
Who needs your bananas to last longer, though?
Look, I don't want to go to the store every other day for bananas.
They're 8 cents each.
What the hell are you talking about? What is going on?
You're going to wrap them in foil?
They're better when they're just a little green. Yeah.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
Too much work.
Not that much trouble.
Too much work.
Says the guy that's got a spreadsheet with 3,000 fantasy teams.
On WGR Sports Radio 550.
It's been an interesting day. It always is, at least somewhat interesting, the Monday after the draft. Can't lie. This draft, rotational defensive linemen, 2 corners.
Maybe this draft needed the juice Bean gave it this morning.
Tell you.
It needed an infusion of Bean. Angry Bean.
Angry Bean. Yeah, angry's probably right. He sounded angry. He makes a point, before we get back to calls again, if you're just tuning in, leaving work, this conversation about the merits, the need for a wide receiver have been ongoing for a long time, not just this particular offseason, I mean years. And just whether the Bills have A, made enough of a commitment, B, picked the right guys. I mean, they're always different things. And we had that again this year. It wasn't a draft for me that it ever seemed like this needed to happen. The guys who were projected to be first-round picks went. The Bills were never trading up for a receiver, I mean, if they were ever going to pick one. What you got today was he revealed, maybe he didn't want to, but he got hot and basically said, we don't need a wide receiver. And that's not a quote. We don't need a wide receiver. Didn't you watch our games? 30 points a game. That is, you just heard the one clip. That is winning football. And is that surprising? It's maybe surprising that he got frazzled and he said it. And he, even in the same interview, later went kind of back to the tone of, we looked at it, we talked about it, if we thought the guy was there, we would have taken him, et cetera, et cetera. No. He told you, and they didn't do it, the actions always speak louder, but he told you that that was not their plan and that they like what they are and who they have. And a lot of people would agree with him. I mean, it is 31 points a game. It's just, as we push it another day forward here, and really today's story is more about like him kind of losing it on the air, not so much the same debate we have all the time.
Right.
Are the guys they have good enough?
Yeah, and can they continue to score at the clip that they were scoring at last year, or something close to it? Another year in this offense, another year without this person in it, this number one receiver. And again, like confusion here about how you get that guy. The Bills were not going to get a guy that would be that right away in this draft anywhere. Maybe. I mean, maybe if they traded up on Thursday, But beyond that, like, you're looking at someone who would be more of a grower with you, which is, I think, totally normal and called for, given the state of their room right now. But I'm mostly about, can you keep doing this? Can you keep scoring at this level? You had a lot of good fortune with turnovers last year, and that's not all accidental. Some of that is a focus on it and attention to it, okay, but still, it was so disproportionate. And that helped them a lot. And sure, I know they needed help on defense. The turnovers tell part of that story. I mean, the playoff game against Baltimore, the only stops they got were turnovers. That is no way to live. Like, you got to stop some teams sometimes. So, fine, devote your assets. But I felt like going into the offseason, Bean himself, along with the head coach McDermott, kind of sounded the alarm about Coleman and to a lesser extent Kincaid. I wasn't sitting here when the season wrap-up news conferences were going on worried about either one of those players. But the way they talked about what they needed them to do more of made me think, like, boy, are they really worried? Because to be public like that, it can be. It doesn't have to be. Maybe it's just brutally, completely honest. Everything's on the table here. But I feel like normally if they're going to say something like that about a player publicly,
it's a strategy.
And in private, it's probably much harsher or direct or whatever. It's just they're more worried about it than they're letting on by even bringing it up, I think. That's my cue. I could be making a mistake in that, I admit. But that was always on my mind through this process about free agency and the draft, trade for a receiver. Are they gonna do it? Do they feel they have the need? Because they're talking like they're talking about their last two first-rounders needing, they need more. And, I agree, of course they need more, but how worried are you? How certain are you you're going to get it? And add to that once last year with the Everybody Eats and all the T-shirts and all the good tidings Everybody Eats brought, they traded for a guy who had been a number one his entire career in the NFL 6 weeks into the season. So your own actions and words sort of, for me, created the need in a more pronounced way than I think I would have otherwise.
You're saying you thought they might do it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of people thought the same. I guess I did too. But today, on a normal day, from being based on what he'd said previously, it would have been, I guess the guy wasn't there. I'd be saying that kind of thing today. I guess who knows if they would have. But would you not agree? He today was like, we would not have. That was the rant. 803-0550. Ian is next. Hi, Ian.
Hey, guys. Yeah, thanks for taking my call. Appreciate it.
Sure. You're welcome.
I just want to first, I got 4 points, but I want to explain where I'm coming from.
Right.
I'm not.
Do it quick.
Yeah, got it. Okay. I was fine with the draft, a little disappointed. Wide receiver wasn't addressed more than it was. I'm just bothered how Bean did it today. It makes me question him. He says only one football, so many people, but then he says everybody eats. That's really contradictive. He talks about wanting speed every year, but never actually goes for it other than getting some washed-up guys who's never really been relevant on any team to any significance. He goes out and gets Cooper, works out Elijah Moore today, but defends that they're good at wide receiver and doesn't really need to do anything. That's super contradictive. And then he goes and says they have like 30 points a game, but doesn't want to pay Cook, even though he had a big part in that, which is fine. I'm not about that anyway for running back, but you got to have a plan. Matt Collins was your leading receiver, for heaven's sake, for touchdowns, and you didn't even really do anything to resolve that matter, So those are my issues with it. I'd like to know what you guys think.
Thanks, Ian. It's definitely, I think you'd have to admit, not time to give Bean the L for Cook, right? Nothing has really happened yet.
No.
And you don't want to just pay, you don't want your GM paying players whatever they want.
And an L for Cook would be giving him $15 million a year, in my opinion.
Yeah. So they didn't draft anybody that would make you think that they're moving in on him. I mean, they didn't literally draft one running back here. So The rest of it, we're kind of saying it all. It's it's kind of more of the same. Is it contradictory to bring in Elijah Moore when you like your room? I don't want to say that. This was last year, over and over, by the way, when they were bringing in all these different guys who were, at best sort of journeymen or dart throws. I mean, you want to give him credit for trying. Just because he says we like our guys doesn't mean he should never try to get another one. That's kind of the objection in the first place.
Right.
But again, is Elijah Moore good? Is anybody really past Shakir that they have good? Not anybody here on this list. I guess maybe Samuel a little bit, but that's a few years ago, has really proven that. Let's go to Justin next. Hi, Justin.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
I'll just touch on offense real quick, and then I really want to get to the head coach and what this draft means to him. But, Josh Allen was MVP last year, but that was really what he did without, not what he did with. He had his lowest total yards passing and total yards touchdowns in the season since 2019. And I think it was the Bulldog who was saying, is this sustainable? I mean, he only had 27 yards passing against Baltimore. So, I mean, you don't really win too many games like that. I mean, I think we lucked into a couple turnovers and things like that as well. But really, apart from the offense, what I want to know is, what's going on and what pressure this places on McDermott, because this really isn't an issue about Kansas City. This in the playoffs, this is about Kansas City, the Bengals. I mean, we gave up, 30 plus of Skylar Thompson and Miami. I'm one to believe that, look, maybe it's a scheme thing. I don't know. But my concern is that, we're talking about, and I think, again, Bulldog brought this up, we're trying to beat KC by 4. Well, why not just be up by 14? And for me personally, I think Josh Allen honestly could get us to the playoffs with a box of Twinkies at head coach. The question is, how are we going to get beyond that? How are we going to make this Super Bowl? And how are we going to win a Super Bowl? And I love McDermott and his philosophy and everything like that with, keeping the locker room, squared away. But seriously, I have to ask myself, dude, we've given you so much stuff and it still isn't enough. And my question is, hey, when do we start asking the question as a head coach who's a defensive guru?
Justin, let me stop you there because you said a lot and we got your point.
The question's been asked for 3 years already.
It's been asked before, but I kind of feel today like it's on notice.
Yeah.
Because he is right. They've poured into the defense. Back-to-back draft picks a few years ago. I mean, all the draft capital, Von Miller, on and on. They have gone after defense almost this entire time, relative to offense. Of course, you're always drafting for both. And here we are at this sort of maybe tipping point for some. All right, you've lost to the Chiefs in the playoffs 4 years out of 5. You got to stop them one of these times. And this is their putting, the fist down. This is their, here, Sal's point about Oprah. Here's all of it. Here's another 2 corners, 2 defensive tackles, edge. Here's just all of it. Make it work. So make it work. The defensive head coach is supposed to, his edge is that you don't need to have all the talent on defense. And, that's been true enough over the years. He made Benford work. And
yeah, it's not for lack of trying, but yeah, they don't have stars over there, really.
That's what I'm saying. It's not like they're just perfect and any coach could necessarily put them, in the top 10. They slipped, and it's another year without it. So you're having the Groundhog Day existence here. Here are my chips. And they're challenging me on wide receiver. I'm B now. They're challenging me on wide receiver. All right, well, look, we did this. Because one of these years we need to stop these people in January. And if it doesn't happen this year, then what? We'll look all year. We'll be looking back at this draft, and I mean they're going to be rookies, so who knows? But all year we're going to be pointing back to this draft and this was supposed to be.
Yeah.
This was your effort to make that different, so it had better be different.
They really. the last 2 years have happened, so I can't say that they're always doing that because they did draft Kincaid with their first pick and then Coleman, despite 2 trade downs, with their first pick last year. But it feels to me like they have tried. Neither of those are like we got a number one guy here, right? Coleman was the first pick of the second round, not a blue chip prospect. Kincaid, okay, first tight end. That hopefully that amounts to something for you. But year over year here, they what they just did this weekend, they did in 2020 after losing the AFC title game the first time. That's Rousseau and Basham in that following draft, right? Mm-hmm. And so what I think they really haven't done is try. For a while there, we were like, even when they made those picks in 20, really, you just got to outscore them. You're not going to get Patrick Mahomes on the ground. You got to build a team that can come back after he comes back on you, right? And we saw that in the 21 playoffs. I mean, they were just trading blows there, and eventually the Bills lost. Still kind of mind-bogglingly how they did it, but they did. They have not really, to me, had a year in the draft where they have done what they've done on defense a couple times, which is load up, right? And that's the draft, that's free agency. The closest you can come is the trade for Diggs. They made that was a premium asset and a proven commodity that was immediately going to be getting paid, and you did it, and lo and behold, you took maybe the biggest step you've taken in this entire operation. From playoff team to, contender overnight. So I think a lot of the more receivers is just go back to that well and find your way. Sure, I'd like to give up fewer than 9 yards every offensive play in a playoff game. And I'd like to not have A.J. Klein covering Travis Kelce. And all the list of things, the defensive failings, the points per game in these elimination games have been rancid. You still have an opportunity to score more points than them. Yeah, I can't stop them. Until the fourth quarter last year in the AFC title game when you stopped them and gave the offense the ball back and they turned it over on downs themselves. I don't think any of that is unfair. That all happened. So they've not gone as hard at offense, probably because of Allen, and Bean today, I think, reveals that he feels like they don't need to because it's good enough. But is it? Is it unassailable because of their points average? Think about how the season's ended and how they've reacted to that defensively different times. This time, 2020. The last 2 years, your offense had the ball with a chance to win the game around the 2-minute warning in the playoff games that ultimately cost you your season.
Both games literally the 2-minute warning, right? The 2-minute warning in Buffalo is when they come out and it's the 2 incompletions.
Right.
And last year in Kansas City, is it the 1 play?
It's close to it. I can't remember the time, but it's around. That's why I always say around the 2-minute warning.
I think I want to make sure, but I think the 4th down play is the 2-minute warning because I remember part of the argument being and you had time to set it up.
Yeah.
Of course, in 13 seconds, they called timeout before both of those plays, giving them, in theory, time to set it up. Wow. Brian is next. Hi, Brian.
Hey, guys. I guess my point is there's some history here. Bean is not some 1, 2, 3 level or 3-year kind of GM. He's been here. This is 8 drafts now with Bean. He's taken 9 receivers. What's the average round in which the receiver he takes? 5.2. Oh, but what about Diggs? Yeah, it lowers it to 4.9. So we're waiting to the 5th round to take receivers to support the generational talent that you have at quarterback. You have had all of Allen's 20s. This is why there's urgency, Bean. This is why people are angry. You've had from age 22, this is going to be Allen's 29 year. Are you just entitled to his entire career? McDermott and Bean, this is just the one philosophy? We've seen your philosophy, Bean. I guess that's my point. You've had 8 years. You don't take receiver. You got the big swing for Diggs, yes. And after that, your most successful receiver is what? Shakir? He's going to have 150 targets this year. You have 4 viable wide receivers on the roster right now. You can't afford Curtis Samuel to be hurt. He has to play, and he has to be good. You better hope that Keon Coleman takes a step because he can't separate. It puts more pressure on Allen. What I see is a death by 1,000 cuts type of offense where you've got to squeeze blood from a stone. It's 100% efficiency. Allen can't afford a mistake. He's got to be great to score those points. You got to have no turnovers. It's got to go your way. We see it in the playoffs. Mac Hollins was your number one wide receiver in that playoff game. It's no different than 2019 in Houston when Duke Williams is getting the most targets and your fullback down the field is catching passes. Trent Sherfield, you want to pick a point in between? He's having to catch dives from Allen because you got nobody else. You've rested on your laurels since Diggs, man. It started with Emmanuel Sanders. You want to point the pin where it started for me was Emmanuel Sanders is your number 2. He was out of retirement. He wanted to retire. You talked him out of it. And since then, it's been scrubs. Look at the draft history. He takes 2 type of receivers, a 5'10", 4'5", 4'4", kind of guy, or he takes 6'3", 4'5" to 4'6" type players. And they don't pan out. Shorter, Isaiah Hodgins, Gabe Davis. Keep going down the list. Marquez Stevenson. So if you want to get into the names, Crowder in free agency. They're the same type of player. They don't invest in it. So, Bean, you act like there's no history to stand on. You got boat race in the playoffs by the Bengals. Yeah, in part because of the defense, but in part because Allen has nowhere to go with the ball. And you make it so hard on him. That's what fans are reacting to. It's not 1 year. It's not 2 years. It's not fantasy football. You've been at this 8 years, and now McDermott gets more resources for a coach who's 7-7 in the playoffs, and we're still talking about culture in year 8. We've seen your plan. You're topped out, man. Get it done this year.
Brian. Boom. We haven't mentioned in a while that Bean also mentioned picking Allen this morning in that, heated conversation. And
he kind of led with it, actually. Yeah,
that's something. Like how long has he been waiting to whip that out? I picked Josh Allen. In no disrespectful way, I have wondered. I wonder how much credit Bean thinks he deserves for that. I mean, he made the pick. So 2 years went by, and I don't know where we were on that. It's not like out of the box. Allen was just a perfect player. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve credit, just like it's blame when you pick the player, it doesn't work out. It's tied to you. It has to work both ways. It's only fair. But that today was, I picked Josh Allen, and you didn't think I should. So how'd I do? Kind of take. And I mean, that's a long time ago. It comes in over the top of like these recent drafts where I can't come back with Elam right now, right? Because interesting thing. Thanks, Brian. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog at 803-0550. This is WGR.
Draft is in the books. The Bills did make 9 selections, and we did hear from Bills general manager Brandon Beane, who joined our morning show today. But it did include a spirited conversation to start, as Beane appeared to take some offense to some of the criticisms regarding the wide receiver room. If you do want to listen back to that conversation, you can find it up at our website, WGR550.com, the Odyssey app, or on our YouTube page under WGR Sports Radio 550. The Bills, though, could be adding to their wide receiver room. Being later confirmed with One Bills Live, they are having free agent wide receiver Elijah Moore in for a visit. Moore, still just 25, had a career high in catches last season with Cleveland at 61. He also had 538 yards and 1 touchdown. The Pittsburgh Penguins making a change at coach. The first time they're doing that in 10 years. Mike Sullivan and the club have agreed to part ways. After making the playoffs his first 7 years of his tenure, Sullivan failed to do so in the last 3. We do have 2 playoff games tonight in hockey. At 7, the Panthers are up 2-1 on Tampa. Then at 9:30, it's Game 5 of Colorado and Dallas. It is in Dallas, and that series is tied at 2 games apiece. Then 2 games in the NBA. The Cavs are looking for the sweep of the Heat at 7:30. Then at 10, it's the Warriors hosting the Rockets, with Golden State leading that series 2-1. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Headlines. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
Josh Palmer is a good player, and he's going to help us a lot. And I believe he has helped us upgrade our receiving core this year. Let's don't forget adding Josh Palmer. We spent some money there. We obviously paid Khalil Shakir. Curtis Samuel, hopefully he doesn't start out nicked up the way he did. I thought he finished strong for us. Hopefully that's the guy we get. But if he's your 4th receiver, that's pretty good. So I'm not sure at some point in the draft where you're adding that you're going, man, he's better than that.
Brandon Beane this morning on WGR, part of a lengthy conversation. It was Shakir, he said at the end, if he's your 4th receiver?
No, he was talking about Samuel there.
Okay.
He just mentioned Shakir. I think he sort of maybe omitted him the first time through and then got there, but was circling back to Samuel. I think that was...
You would expect, it always happens, even on bad teams, you would expect the people to pump up their own people. That is always what happens, almost always what happens. But... we're counting on some guys here that really have just not been important NFL players, and that includes Palmer. And you're hearing Beane we spent a lot of money on him. That's one thing. He's never been an important player in the league. That's what the Bills did last year. Is all these guys added up to, and they ran the ball great and just turnovers. It added up to a winning formula. Until Kansas City again. You can't pick at their offense, really. It worked. But it's risky.
I'm going to object to a lot of money on that's not a lot of money.
Well, okay, but
receiver-wise, I get it. It's more than just about anything else. Receiver-wise that they're spending. Shakir comes over the top of it eventually. This year his cap number is still really low, Shakir, but these are they're all right homes in a pretty good school district that's adjacent to a better one. Is where I feel they're at with the receiver. They're not terribly bad off, but they're not great. Those 4 guys. Samuel, when's the last time Samuel had a season that you'd go, oh, that's my number 4. That's a guy that's really contributing, that's helping here. I feel like it's been a while.
It was for Carolina.
Right. So, the injuries with him, hopefully he'll stay healthy. What did Jason Zucker say at Locker Cleanout about hope and it being a strategy? Sure, I hope that they're healthy too. I hope that Keon Coleman breaks through. I hope that Dalton Kincaid, fulfills the promise of a 73-catch rookie season in his 3rd season. That's all just hoping. Not really, with the exception of Shakir, has anyone really done what you're, I think, saying you're going to need them to do, which is hold down that job at a better than league average level. Who's that? Coleman has an incomplete grade for the first season because of the injury. Okay, so how bankable is that? Not very. Kincaid, same thing, just a year further down the line. Incomplete. Okay. Shakir, very nice player. I love it. Can count on it. Right? Pencil in for 85 catches or whatever. 90, maybe more.
Wide receiver. That's a wide receiver 3.
Great. Who's the rest? Palmer? Palmer had the same number of catches in his best year that Kincaid had as a rookie and has never been close to it again.
Samuel, in fairness, had 2 back-to-back, almost identical stat line seasons for Washington before coming here. They're 60 for 604. Not, startable in fantasy football, dare I say it, but not nothing. Kevin is next. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, guys. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
Okay, everybody take a breath. I think what needs to be asked is that who would you have taken as a wide receiver that was a known wide receiver, that was a NCAA Division I top wide receiver at pick 30?
Nobody.
And I would ask.
Right. Yeah, nobody. Nobody is saying
hearing that
they should have done that.
My question then is, why didn't we trade up for Marvin Harrison Jr. last year?
Oh, my gosh. Kevin, tell me what that trade would have been. He went, what, 4th overall?
You guys want a wide receiver?
There was no possible way to do that. You could have
a wide receiver.
You could have offered every one of your draft picks and the first round this year. You would not have been able to make that trade.
Okay. Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay, you're sure.
Yes.
My second point is...
Is it as good as this first one?
We have always heard... We don't know that, do we? What we've always heard is defense wins championships.
I have a guess.
Yeah, we scored a lot of points, but the problem is we couldn't stop people on defense when we needed to. That's the issue. That's why they did this.
That's also something everybody concedes.
And I'm sure the Bills will get a wide receiver in the offseason. I'm 100% sure about that. I know that.
Would any wide receiver count for this, Kevin? Are you going to give yourself points if it's anybody?
No.
It's happening today.
Myself points, Mike.
Who could it be?
The point is, I don't know who it's going to be.
Well, it won't be anybody
we know
good.
More about...
Look, Kevin, I'm not just messing with you. Free agency's over. It's today, Elijah Moore, okay? That's what you're talking about. Last year, you could have counted Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Chase Claypool. Does that count? That's not quality.
It's not quality when they're playing when their quarterbacks aren't Josh Allen.
Okay. Thanks, Kevin. I'm sure we're bad guys. Larry's next. Hi, Larry.
Hi, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, so one of the problems that I think a lot of people are having that nobody's saying is none of the guys that they've gone out and gotten in the draft have really hit. I mean, Rousseau's a nice player. Benford's probably the one that's like the guy that really hit. But none of these guys have turned into something where you're like, oh, yeah, Rousseau's going to his 4th year, and you're not looking at him like, hey, that's a dominant defensive end. That's someone guys are game planning for. And so that's where I think, like, the 2 swings that Bean has made, Diggs and Miller. Miller worked until he got injured. That was looking okay.
But it's also huge financial commitment for a guy who was at the end of his career.
Well, true. But if he doesn't get injured and it looked the way it looked, you did, and it went through the season that way.
No,
I would say you could have gotten away with it if that had happened. I'm not saying
you might have said that was worth it.
Sure,
it was worth it.
It would
Super Bowl or not. Granted, Super Bowl would make it obviously worth it, but Super Bowl or not, if it worked out the rest of that season the way it did while he was playing, you would have said, okay, that was a good swing. It was worth it.
I don't think you can qualify that way. They were already. Thanks, Larry. That's fair enough. They were already at a point on their growth chart where to make that deal with Von Miller, I don't think I can say, even if they don't win a Super Bowl, it was worth it. They kind of had to win. That was the point. Yep. They didn't have him, and how have the last couple of years gone without him? The same. So you got him, and I think they might have even framed it this way.
The closer.
You got the closer. That's why you got him, and it cost you massively, in terms of the contract. It was a very tough needle to thread. That had to be in the playoffs. He got hurt. Can you blame the Bills for that? Not exactly.
No,
older player.
I wouldn't want to blame. I mean, you knew the risks. Would you have done it Would you have done it this past March? Same age, same situation. My answer is yes. Like, I'm in here. I want Myles Garrett. I want T.J. Watt. I want Trey Hendrickson. So Miller was a version of that you didn't have to give up anything to get other than the money, and the money was going to be massive. Yeah, you do that to win the Super Bowl. You'll never hear me like, is it a bad contract? Yes. Is it a problem that he is hurt and not producing? Sure. Yeah, that's bad. I've never criticized the signing because I would have done the signing again, I think 100 times out of 100.
Ooh, okay.
It was worth trying to do. And, the injury risk with a player that age and his injury history included is massive. To me, worth the risk. I'm taking a swing. I'm going to try this. And, yeah, it was close to working. It was on track to work. But it didn't. I don't go, therefore, you shouldn't have done it. What a bad move. Despite the ramifications. The ramifications were big. It was, to me, worth doing and would be again.
Two things. Whether it was this past caller, Larry, or the previous one, is this fair? Like, they are drafting really late in every round every year. Like, it's not like you're sitting at the top of the draft and you can be Cleveland and get it right. So there's that disadvantage. It makes it when you talk about Rousseau, it makes it tougher. Mm-hmm. That's also Coleman. It's even if they draft Worthy, maybe that's just iffy, not perfect. Second, Marvin Harrison Jr., how dare you? I mean, follow the league. Somebody is in his car going, at least Brian Thomas. Don't you know? You want to put that point in front of these guys? Sound like you follow the league. You could have traded up for Brian Thomas. Of course, it's hindsight, and I wouldn't have done it. So that's on me, I guess. But Marvin Harrison Jr., you just do not follow the draft. Scott is next. Hi, Scott.
Hey, guys. Thanks for letting me on.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Are you sure you want to go through with it?
Go back. You know what? I think I do. We've done it a couple of times, but end of the day, I think we're going to end up just fine. But for today's purposes, I guess I want to. I kind of want to go back. I remember a year ago. It seems like we were having this exact same conversation going into the draft. It just seems like we've just gone again. And I guess we all knew ad nauseum for the last couple of months that we were going to go on defense. I mean, it didn't matter. We were all talking about. Sal was like, "We're going to double up. We're going to do this. We're going to do that." So we kind of knew where we were. And I think to your point, which means a lot, because of how we win every year, we don't have the opportunity to go in there and pick up a lot of these good receivers. So I don't understand that piece of it. And the baseline to this whole thing is, are we putting points on the board? We obviously are. So all the people that want to bitch and moan about how we don't have the receiver to do this, well, we're figuring out how to put all the points on the board because we're second in the league in scoring, I think. So a way to do that. Secondarily to the whole thing is that you look at a team like Kansas City who struggled mightily during the middle of the year. What kept them in the games? It was their defense, and it wasn't just me. Lots of people said that. They had a defense that kept in the game, waiting for their offense to start showing up. They had some of the similar problems. They didn't have the star wide receivers. They picked those guys up. And I guess we just need to take a step back and remember, we got a really good team here. And at some point here, I mean, we traded Mac Hollins off, and he was our best receiver last year, but we still put points on the board.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens this year. Again, you're not making points that anybody's disputing. If the straw man argument is, why should they have drafted defense? Nobody's saying they shouldn't have drafted defense. Not only did everybody expect them to, I mean, it's logical. It makes sense. And that is further to why being the way he was today is so interesting. Like, he had no particular, easy for me to someone else to say, but it was so strange. He was triggered by hearing probably the conversation about receivers as he joined the show, and really easy enough. And he's probably done it over and over in interviews. Is like, yeah, well, our defense needed more help, and that's it. So it was a better draft for defense. That's just going to be his opinion. He's qualified.
Plenty of people share that opinion.
Right. I mean, he's easily in the majority on both points. What the draft was good for, A, and B, what was needed for the Bills. So you really don't need, but guys, don't forget, defense wins championships. But we haven't forgotten that. It's a conversation about whether the guys they have are good enough and whether the Bills care enough and notice it and want to get really seriously better at that position. And by their actions, it's no. Trading down last year for Coleman, etc. This caller who wants them to get a wide receiver, and then he's mad at me for saying, like, who would count at this point? Go ahead and tell me. Bean today, I mean, I don't think I have to worry about it. Totally boxed himself in. We can't have shows in the next 5 months about whether the Bills should trade for some wide receiver if somebody's George Pickens, right? George Pickens maybe is somebody that still could be traded. Bulldog and I come on the air tomorrow. Do you think the Bills should trade for George Pickens? You idiot. Didn't you hear the general manager yesterday? Right. There's nothing he's going to do. He's told you. Imagine if he did that. What's going on? It would seem like maybe Pagula came in over the top and made it happen, like he's Antonio Brown or something. Man, feels good. 803-0550, Mike Schopp and the Bulldog, WGR. Buffalo News.
Thought to mention that because I expressed something on social earlier and had a mind to want to say something on the air. Yeah, 43 years, 35 of them covering the Bills. I mean, just tremendous. I mean, he goes back to when before I first started, when Vic and Larry and this whole crew were covering the Bills. Mark crossed from that to current times. Just a tremendous career he's had.
In the times of the days when I would go to the stadium, two different kind of eras of that, I always found Mark to be sort of a calming, gentle presence, face in the press box, because sometimes I'd be sort of sparring with the Bills and kind of like a little bit feeling uncomfortable, or just even maybe someone else in the media. But Mark was somebody that just a nice, sweet guy, it seems. I don't know him that well to be talking like this, but always enjoyed being around Mark.
Same here.
Johnny is next. Hi, Johnny.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
I think it was the guy before the last break, Brian, who had some great points about the Bills wide receiver corps and how it's just something that's been neglected for so long. And it just feels like he was saying, it's average around 5 every year where we're taking a receiver and being like, maybe. And it just, I hear all these people saying, oh, defense wins championships, defense wins this. But at the end of the day, the last 2 playoffs, we've had the ball with 2 minutes left and a chance to win with Josh Allen at quarterback. And what I saw were guys who couldn't separate on the field. And when a receiver goes down, whether it's Shakir or a tight end like Kincaid, somebody gets injured for a few games, it completely – and I know we still score points, and it's a hard argument to make, and I get it. And that's Bean's point. Well, we still score points. But this offense isn't scary. Against some of the better defenses like a Kansas City, like a Houston, like a Baltimore, this offense struggles. And we continue to just pour assets into the defense, whether it has been our numerous free agent signings over the winter or spring, I should say, and then the draft, the first 5 picks, you're like, okay, defense, defense, defense. And we went into last year with the same concerns. Oh, what are we going to do? We have a bottom 5 receiving core in the NFL. I come into this year, and I don't see it any differently. We still have a bottom 5 receiving core. So to say, and I think most media members, most NFL teams would say the same thing. And to say I don't know why you guys want a receiver. Well, why wouldn't we? We want to see the most talent around a generational quarterback who, if we didn't have, or if it was, some of the things he does, I don't think a guy like, maybe Mahomes and Jackson are the only 2 quarterbacks who could do what Allen does with the level of talent around him. And then you've got a guy like James Cook who is kind of holding out a little bit. We don't know what he's going to do. And so there's an iffy position. It's not saying we should have taken a running back, but we need playmakers on this offense for our quarterback. And Josh Palmer, what has he done in the league? He's a completely unproven commodity. And I look at Philly, who's got an A.J. Brown, a Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley. They're paying all these guys on offense, and they're like, yeah, we love it. And defensively, they're strong too. You compare the rosters, okay, maybe we have a slightly better offensive line, maybe comparable, but position to position, Josh Allen and Christian Benford might be the only 2 winning positions on that football field if you compare apples to apples.
Okay. Thanks, Johnny. What an interesting day. I got a question about today after the update. We'll have time for more of your calls, of course. 803-0550. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog, WGR.
The 2025 NFL Draft is in the books. The Bills made 9 selections earlier today. Bills general manager Brandon Beane did join our morning show. It did include, though, a spirited conversation to start, as Beane appeared to take offense to some of the criticisms regarding the Bills wide receiver room.
I'd love to play fantasy football, but there's one football. You can't give it, but so many people. I don't understand this narrative. I felt it a little bit from a couple of the reporters in the thing. Like, our job is to score points. It doesn't matter what receivers, what quarterback. If you score points at the level we scored, that is winning football.
You can listen to that entire conversation up at our website, WGR550.com, our Odyssey app, or on our YouTube page under WGR Sports Radio 550. The Bills, though, could be adding to their wide receiver room, as Beane later confirmed on One Bills Live. They are having free agent Elijah Moore in for a visit. Moore, still just 25, had a career high in catches with Cleveland with 61, had also 538 yards and 1 touchdown. The Pittsburgh Penguins are making a coaching change, the first time in 10 years. Mike Sullivan and the club did agree to part ways. He made the playoffs his first 7 years on the job, failed to do so the last 3 years. Staying with hockey, 2 games tonight at 7. The Panthers are up 2-1 on Tampa. Then at 9:30, it's Game 5 of Colorado and the Stars. It's in Dallas. That series is tied at 2 games apiece. Then 2 games in the NBA. The Cavs are looking for the sweep of the Heat at 7:30. Then at 10, it's the Warriors hosting the Rockets, with Golden State leading that series 2-1. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
Mike Schopp.
You might be mocking me or you might be staunchly agreeing with me. I can't tell.
I'm mocking you.
And the Bulldog.
What is Fozzie Bear's role in this production?
On WGR Sports Radio 550.
Fair to say that when it comes to the discussion about whether the Bills need to spend more draft capital at wide receiver, General Manager Brandon Beane has had it. That's what, to say the least, maybe came out this morning on WGR. We've been talking about it a lot today, which means we've really not been talking much at all about the players they actually picked. We'll have time for that.
Many of whom I like.
Yeah, right.
I like their first 4 picks. I mean, I really, really do. I think all 4 of those guys will contribute in some way, even if it's just as a rotational piece, in the case of maybe Walker and to an extent Jackson. The other 2 I would expect to play maybe a lot.
But what is the sum total of their value by virtue of the positions they play? That's really at the heart of the wide receiver thing. Here's Anthony with us. Hi, Anthony.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking the call. Listen, I've been listening to you guys for 20 years, and the thing I appreciate about GR is that you guys aren't just a ho-hum station that just, cut and dry stations, and that's what I appreciate about you guys the most. So having said that, what I want to get to is I think Sean McDermott is a good coach. He's a good person. I like him. He's given us a lot of good years. I sat through 6-3 Browns games, and I never have to want to go through that again. But what I think it ultimately comes down to, and the reason why Brandon got so offended or whatever you want to call it was this morning, is that if they really could tell you what they really feel, and of course they never will, it's that they still think, to some extent, that defense wins championships, that a good low-scoring game, to some extent, is the best way they want to win. They'll never admit that, and I think we just lucked out and got a unicorn at quarterback that can cover up a lot of those flaws and can get receivers to get separation when he's running with his head cut off, trying to get them to get open. And, that's where I think that the core problem is their core philosophy, whatever they want to tell you. I think Daboll rubbed McDermott the wrong way and wanted to have that kind of high up tempo, and I know he went to be a head coach. I get it. But I think that was a clash there, and I think Brady is the young guy who will kind of, to some extent, do what McDermott says, and they have this kind of dink and dunk offense that still scored points. I get it. I know he scored a lot, but I just think at the end of the day, that's until that philosophy changes and they think more offensively minded, we're going to be there like almost to the end, but not going to get there. That's just my opinion.
Thank you. I think there's a lot of truth in that. It's more 2 years ago when they were struggling before changing out Ken Dorsey, where I think that was really obvious. And then what they did by going to Brady is I think they decided basically to lean into it. If we want to play that sort of way, it sort of aligns philosophically with running the ball, extra linemen, and they were very successful at it. So I think you're probably mostly right. I don't know how much of it is Beane's way, but I think it is McDermott's, and I think it's fair enough to maybe assume that they're enough like-minded when it comes to that.
Yeah, there's something in there that to me is just making one too many assumptions about them. Basically, the way the caller is describing it, being held at gunpoint to having a 21st century NFL offense or something. I think they pivoted when they felt they needed to pivot, and I think the league has sort of followed suit. Like, I'm not saying they set the trend, but they reacted to it very early, and I think that's to their credit. I think it's convenient. It fits in certain kind of a narrative that the caller's constructing to say, like, you know, Daboll and McDermott were oil and water. I recognize that it does not look like their interactions on fields since this has happened, or maybe it's only happened one time since he left. It don't look warm and fuzzy, but I think it just goes one step a little too, to my ear, a little too far in assuming McDermott doesn't like any of this. I mean, I think they changed when defenses were taking away and making it hard to do what they had been doing under Daboll, and they changed. And again, that's to their credit. None of it should be mistaken for meaning they don't need good receivers, though. Like, that they shouldn't be trying to find someone who might be able to fill a role for them by, you know, at some point in the future, maybe as soon as, I don't know, when the playoffs get here, again, because that's what really is ultimately going to matter. I think there's like so many, everything is like this. You stand on one side and the overreaction, the criticism to where you're standing is an overreaction. Like where were they going to get a receiver on Saturday that was going to step in and be better than Khalil Shakir? I don't know. I'm not telling you for sure they would have. What I know is that they're not going to ever get one if they don't try to get one. You might find...
Wait a minute. Slow down.
Another version of him. You might find the defense's version of Christian Benford, who's basically like a number one receiver drafted in the 6th round. I mean, he's a corner, but like, you're not availing yourself of any of that if you do not try. That's all. Like, I would not have expected if they'd picked somebody, the Utah State guy that went, did the Chiefs get him? I don't remember, right?
Jalen Royals.
If they had found their way to him at some point, I don't know. I don't think Bean, maybe he's still as hot as he was this morning. I don't know. But that's all anybody was really looking for. It's like, try to find a guy that can help you more than what you have already done this offseason. That's all. It's not, you think they were going to find a replacement for Stephon Diggs on Saturday at the draft. No, I'm not a moron. I want you to try, though. Try to find someone who might play a role. I mean, they said themselves they needed more of a downfield element, speed in their passing game. Where is that coming from? Laviska Shenault?
Palmer. That's their bet. AJ is next. Hi, AJ.
How's it going, Show Bulldog? Appreciate you taking my call. I just wanted to build off kind of what you were just talking about philosophically. And I want to preface this with, I think, Jeremy does make a fair point. Going back to the conversation earlier, that's what this is about. Going back to Jeremy's point earlier with, trying to attack receiver earlier, and that need has always been there. And Bean's point was obviously clear about, they were the best offense in the NFL. But in terms of this, philosophically, I look at it this way, and I really don't like how Bean handled it, whatever, how he came up and kind of just fired away, whatever. Mm-hmm. It's not really going to matter down the line, obviously. It might resurface in conversation if the Bills' offense struggles, whatever. But I just want to talk about, the philosophy. I'll try to make this as short-winded as possible. But if you go back to, the 2020, 2021, 2022, and even the 23 Bills, you have to think, they were a pass-heavy offense. They were a team that threw the ball around the yard. Josh Allen's throwing 50 times a game. You have multiple receivers. You got Gabe Davis, Stephon Diggs. You're signing John Browns, Cole Beasley's, Emmanuel Sanders, veteran players. And that was their identity, right? And that was their identity with Daboll and Dorsey. Very pass-heavy, very pass-oriented, explosive, score quick. Joe Brady comes into the picture, and they're now a balanced attack, right? Taking time off the clock, trying to get to 2nd and 6, 3rd and 3, move the sticks. Be very more, I should say, structured in how they run their offense, and everybody eats mentality, and getting the tight ends involved and the running backs involved, and Ty Johnson and James Cook in the passing game. I think the need of receiver is always important. I think it is an important thing, but the shift from the fans, the fans we're always a receiver. DeAndre Hopkins is available, let's go get him. Odell Beckham Jr. is available, let's go get him. It was always that wide receiver mindset. And now I look at the offense in a different light. They've retooled the offensive line to the best it's ever been. They're a more balanced attack. They use the tight ends. I know they struggled a bit last year with Kincaid and Knox, getting them truly involved. And the receivers and running backs, I think it's a culmination of the offense, and I think too often we neglect the running back and tight end positions and focus so much on that receiver need.
AJ.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Who's neglecting tight end and running back? Us, the Bills? Fans? Who's?
Sorry. Fans. I think us as fans, we don't.
The Bills have two tight ends. Were they supposed to?
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I'm not saying. Yeah, no. Just my point is that I think the fans have wanted receivers for so long, and now with this offense and the mentality of it and the way it's structured, that's not how.
Right.
They don't value receiver as much, and they extended Shakir. They're signing Palmer to a 12-year deal, a $12 million deal over a couple of years. Curtis Samuel was brought in, and it worked last year. So I think they want to run it back. I get the need for a receiver. I would love a day 3 flyer. I was listening to you before. I would love the Jalen Royals.
AJ, we got to go. We got to go. Thank you. I think I got your point, which is that fans should realize their offensive philosophy has changed, which is a point I make very often. I think maybe that's understood better than maybe you do. I hope I haven't misunderstood you. Thanks for the call. Here's what I wanted to bring up when I mentioned before the break, just a question about today. I have to say, and I've had nothing to do with it, I am really taken by how fired up in a critical way the fans we've heard from today are. When I said earlier and maybe on Twitter last week, the day after the draft for me is the day where we and the fans are the most at odds. Because we're trying to, did they do well? Did they draft the right positions? Did they draft the right players? And, a lot of fans sort of show up after the draft and are be like, well, how can you grade them? How do you know? If you knew he'd be in the league, all this kind of stuff. Bean this morning, I don't know if I don't want to say protected us from that.
He took it off the table, that's for sure.
He took he took over. And, I mean, it sounds like a lot of I'm not shocked, but I'm surprised by kind of the balance. I thought we were in for back and forth between here's why he was out of line and why don't you guys show him more respect? I don't know if we've had one person today sort of accuse us of I don't know, ignoring his success or just nobody's apologizing for him that is calling in. Nobody's what kind of an offseason is this going to be now? What did he do today? They have won like crazy. Yeah, there have been some missed draft picks, but Bean has been a very popular and successful figure with the Bills. What did he do today?
Turned the heat up. He threw himself in a pot and turned the burner all the way up.
Because
I think is what he did today.
He's not only in the usual sort of measured fashion, well, here was our board. We liked some of these wide receivers, but we had more needs on defense, and boom. That's super easy to say, and there's no controversy. And we know we have the debate we have every day about whether they should have, but it's only that. And it's kind of tired, and I'm not sure one person calls in to have that conversation today. We've had it so many times. I got to the point of exhaustion last week by it. And, it's settled. But what are we hearing fans bring up today? Von Miller, Zay Jones.
Right. His whole history is up for examination, and he made the appointment. But he put it on the agenda by doing what he did today. Look, that's not across the board, but there's nothing unfair about that. And you know what? I don't even mind. I mean, I'm not. Our friends in the morning can handle themselves. I'm not being protective of them. We've been in the same shoes at different times with different people, maybe not to this level that I can remember. This thing has gotten all around the league, like you've said. A lot of people are paying attention to it in a way that I can't recall another example of, certainly involving us personally, but anyway, or professionally. He has, I said this earlier, he's turned the pressure up on himself, on the organization, and on Kincaid and Coleman, maybe specifically, or the entire receiving corps. Like you better show us the real tomato ketchup here, or what? Or you have increased the pressure. Now, look, how much does that matter? Because in reality, the pressure was already immense. What can they do that they haven't done? There's really only one thing. Well, to get to the Super Bowl and win it. And you can do one without the other, right? You can't win it if you don't get there. So at least get there. That would be progress. So there was already an unhealthy, I think, amount of pressure. It's barely even fair to be judged by that standard. Anything but that is failure. Tough. Somehow, a man running a football team that's in that spot, and he and McDermott both, as the GM and the coach, are in that pressure cooker, he found a way, I think, to make it even harder on himself.
Maybe. That's really only a question he can answer, I think.
Yeah,
right?
He might not care at all about any of it.
He might, right. It was just maybe one bad day. But I don't expect fans, it'll drive us all crazy if we're in here litigating the whole 8 years all summer. There'll be times.
Yeah. And
we won't know a thing about any of these draft picks, any of the receivers who were picked until September. We won't know a single thing. What did today tell us about what kind of mood the fans are in about the Bills? Is that I'm asking, right? I'm not trying to draw a big conclusion. I'm just really surprised that it hasn't been more of a day where like the fans who kind of defend the Bills on everything call up and do it. Just like, what are we talking about? So we got it's on Twitter. Twitter's to me, what I've seen today is kind of more back and forth.
Yep.
Because there are a lot of people who are always sort of ready to attack the media and, it's our fault. And why are we disrupting, what is it called, the apple cart? What does that mean?
Upset the apple cart.
What does that mean?
It means that someone would be hauling apples in a cart and you tip it over. Why did you do that? Why did you upset the apple cart?
Is it really just that basic? Is just like you tip it over? Not just sort of like shake it for a second?
But I don't know what the criteria are for actually upsetting.
No, I don't either. Yeah. I shouldn't have thought of it. Shouldn't have brought it up.
You shouldn't have thought of it. Don't be so hard on yourself.
I mean, cooler heads here, but what did he do? What did he do today? It's made for a couple of really good discussions. One, again, like sort of the merits of his point, 30 points a game. Was our offense not working? Everything that he kind of said, and it's a fine argument.
It's factual.
It's right.
Right.
It's there. But then there's also like, how about that he sort of flipped? And why would a guy who's won so much need to have been so defensive about the whole thing? I mean, anybody can flip. We've all had those moments.
Sure.
Somebody on Twitter early today said to me about his passion and his honesty, and I said, that's fine, and nobody's going to criticize him for that. But sometimes when you get hot, you often say something you regret, or you reveal something that you would rather not do, which is why at every press conference they don't say, anything like what he said so defensively about his offense and his decisions. It usually doesn't sound like that, obviously. So, well, I woke up today, trying to figure out how much TJ Sanders is going to weigh.
I woke up. I slept a little. 8:30 is usually the latest that I will wake up, and I woke up right around 8:30. Just touched my iPad to see what time it was, and I had messages already. Like Bean had just started, and I had messages from people who work here. Like, oh my God! Like all caps. Like
really?
You're gonna want to.
I didn't get one.
You're gonna want to hear this. Yeah.
I didn't get a message from anybody who works here.
Your son's not a video content producer on the morning show.
Oh, I think that's right.
Right.
I think that's correct.
That's how that happened. Yeah. So anyway.
Although he might be nearing that point, I did encounter a friend of his from like when they were little kids, checking out at the grocery store on Saturday.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, you work here? I thought you were 6.
Right.
Turned out she was 6.
And now she's
tall for her age.
Yeah, not. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, that's right. That's better. She's no longer 6. Sal joined us earlier on the Maelstrom. Hear everything with Bean today, but also the draft itself. We'll have that for you after this here on WGR.